Hello, Glowbusters. Yes, of course they're serious. You do? You have? No kidding. Uh-huh. Oh, they'll cure your globitis this week. Thank you. We got one!
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Glowbusters.
What are you supposed to be, some kind of a cosmonaut?
No, we're exterminators.
And now, here's your host.
And welcome everybody to Glowbusters, putting the pieces together. I'm your host, Bob Xanadude60, and here we are, another Sunday. Beautiful day in South Carolina today. Spring is just so my favorite season. And if you've never been to this part of the country, guys, this is a place that is absolutely worth visiting and definitely worth living here. Cami and I have been here for about a year and a half now, something like that, and absolutely loving it. It's just beautiful here, and the people are okay, and believe it or not, even their politicians, seem to have their shit together, which is surprising. So, so far so good. And it was kind of strange because you guys may remember when we decided to move out of Denver when all this craziness hit, and we all know what we're talking about. I saw the writing on the wall. I think a lot of people did, and that Denver unquestionably was not the place that we wanted to be. Even though I was born there, I grew up there. Cami and I both felt this overwhelming urge to get the hell out of there because it's just a lot. There's a lot of problems that are happening there, and so far everything that we figured would happen is happening. It's quickly becoming one of the most expensive places to live, and their politics are getting more and more insane. Their social procedures, all that stuff, it's just like, wow, which really sucks. Cause when you spend 56 years, basically, or, almost 60 years in a place, to see it go like that, it's the pits, but whatever. But the good side is the South Carolina is awesome, and we're glad we're here, and we're glad that we were able to bring all of you with us. So today, guys, we are broadcasting on YouTube, DLive, and Rockfin. And the Rockfin stream is free. I put it that way because I wasn't sure if we were going to be talking about any verboten subjects on YouTube, but at least it's nice to have that option. If we want to, talk about something like that, we can just kill the YouTube feed and go over, and you guys can listen on Rockfin or DLive. So there you have it. All right. Well, quite a few things have been happening this week, and we've got all kinds of news items that we're going to kind of, go over. And we are also missing a couple of people. I'm not sure where Austin is off the top of my head. We've been trying to get a hold of him. Hopefully he's okay. Iru is on his way to his office, but we do have Jeran and Zack with us today, and also Cami. She may jump in for a little bit, and David Weiss may even jump in, especially on one of the subjects that we're going to be covering. So let's go ahead and introduce our illustrious panel. First up, as always, is Jeran from Jeranism. Hey, Jeran.
Bob, how's it going?
Going good. Can't complain.
Excellent. Doing well myself.
I can hardly wait. I'm seriously going to do this. I'm going to move this studio. I'm going to make it somehow so I can do this broadcast from outside on our back patio, where we overlook the river. Because, it is so freaking gorgeous right now.
You did that last year at some point. You were out in the back.
Yeah, I was up in Cami's office. That's right, or maybe I was out on the back patio, because Cami's office is kind of a screened-in room, and it's directly above our lower patio, and our lower patio, of course, goes down into the gardens. And oh God, you should see our gardens. It's unbelievable. Zach's been going crazy. So we have all these gardens. The foliage is out of this world here, and then we've got this fantastic river right at the bottom of our property, and it's like wow. So, yeah, I'd really love to do the broadcast from out there, so I'm going to make that happen.
Very
So,
cool.
very cool. So, next up is Mr. Zachary Zabala, or Good Times for All, if you prefer. How you doing today, Zach?
Yeah, doing great, Bob. Great to be here.
Awesome sauce. All right, and Cami is she'll probably be popping in and out a little bit, but for now, it's just the three of us, and we may even take some phone calls a little bit later on. We have a bunch of little hodgepodge stuff. We had some things that came up that we thought were interesting news items, and so we just thought we'd kind of go through that and talk about it. So let's see, what I want to start with. I guess what I'll start with is, as many of you know, we are going to be having a very special guest on with us, and it's going to take place tomorrow. Well, at least the interview is, except I think we're going to record it. Do I want to do this yet? Hang on a second. Let me see if I want to do something else yet. No, we'll go ahead and talk about this now. So, David Weiss managed to hook up somehow, and I really don't know how all this happened, but somehow he got in touch with Ken Wheeler, and like many people have and have tried to get him to come on, but somehow he got Ken Wheeler to agree to come on to our show. And I was dumbfounded, to say the least, because if you know anything about Ken Wheeler, Ken basically well, he's said it flat out a few times that he thinks that flat earth is stupid, right? The idea is stupid. But sometimes I think that, he's not being so sincere with that. I think he's the kind of guy that he has a lot to lose by associating himself with flat earthers, and I'll go into that in a little bit. But as we all know, by studying his work, and if you know anything about Ken at all, the dude is a straight up genius. He is multilingual. He speaks like 4 or 5 different languages, including...
I think it's 5 languages.
Yeah. Including ancient Greek, ancient Greek, Russian, Sumerian, and a few others. German, I think I heard him talking once. And yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, so he does all this, for fun, right? And he is recognized as an expert in being able to do this. And he's done a lot of translation work, and the guy's just got a portfolio a mile long. And besides that, he is probably, without a doubt, the world's foremost expert living in the 21st century on magnetism. And I may even say even on electricity, even though Eric Dollard is kind of right up there as well. But of course, that would be all in who you talk to, right? Because most people would say Eric Dollard is a quack, right? Because when Eric Dollard, who is a very, very respected scientist, electrical engineer, PhD, professor, he got a job, I don't know, gosh, it was like 20 years ago, something like that, working at the Sonoma State University, right? And the project that he was given was to find out the nature of the sun. Well, he did that, and they didn't like what he found. And unfortunately, after that happened, he was let go. His research grants were cut. He was, they went after him and tried to ruin him in every single way. I mean, he wound up homeless in his car for a while. And it was unfortunate because what he was finding out was that the sun is not this physical object, right? He knew full well, and all of the data reflected that. And of course, he's not the first one to say this either. Many people from our past have said that too. It's a plasma manifestation, a focal point, whatever. But in Eric's words, he said something about that the sun was a converter, and it was converting energies. And I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly, because I think that whatever is powering the sun is also powering the moon as well. And it could very well be like the Masons depict it, that there's this dark sun or black sun that is kind of feeding both of them, and even a lot of the energetic signatures that we see in the sky, and the stars and stuff like that. So he came out and he did a very comprehensive report on it, and oh man, that pretty much finished him in his career. He got ousted, and obviously he became very, very bitter. And now he almost comes across as just this crotchety old man that hates everybody. And he's not the first person that's happened to. There was a guy that did it was called the Joseph Newman Energy Machine. Do you remember him, Zach? Joseph Newman?
Yeah, the name rings a bell.
Yeah, well, I actually did a piece on him on Globebusters, right? 4 or 5 years ago, and he had this 0 point energy machine, basically, that he tried to get patented, and he had members of Congress go to bat for him. He had engineers from television stations. He had engineers from universities saying, this is the real deal. This is not bullshit. This absolutely works 100%. He was able to take and power a 450 ampere, 3-phase, 440 volt
Good
motor
Lord.
on a bank of about 25 9-volt batteries. It's like, get the fuck out of town, man. Yeah, I've got all this documentation. I have all of it. It's one of the most amazing stories you have ever heard in your life. And it was all over the news. And ultimately it came down to, because this was before the news was entirely corrupt. But, it came down to basically the person that was in charge of the patents office would not issue the patent because of personal interests. And that's as far as it went, right? Obviously, somebody was on their ass, and you do not issue this, because if you do, we're finished, right? But yeah, oh man, I should probably cover that again, because that, like I said, it's called the Big Bertha, or Big something, Big Eureka. The story of Joseph Newman.
I do remember that. Wasn't it a big thing? That it was a real big thing, and once he got it going, it just it had a big weight on it.
Yeah.
And it was really large too, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I mean the power consumption, you have to understand, when something is running on 440 volts 3-phase and is drawing a couple hundred amps, we're talking tens of thousands of watts of power, right, to be able to run this machine. And he literally was able to primer it with a bank of, I think it was like 20 or 25 9-volt batteries. He shows the hookup. And like I said, he had engineers from every university, every television station there, to the point where even the television station engineers, their companies after a while wouldn't let them go there anymore or say anything, and they had to shut up about it. It got all shut down. And ultimately then what happened is, now if you look at Joseph Newman, the latest piece on him is he looks like a nutcase, right? He acts like a nutcase. He's bitter as hell. He hates the world. And can you blame him? I mean, my God, here he is trying to give this gift to humanity. And just this machine that we're all trying to battle. I mean, really, really put the screws to him. And, he could have changed the world. And they just shut him down. But so anyway, it's the same type of story with Eric Dollard. And, this is the reason why they had to bring in quacks, complete fuzzy-haired crackpots like Einstein, with his dumbass theories, and completely subvert science and the scientific method, and take us off into Narnia in imagination land, and validate things that have never been seen or even theorized as possible, right? They can write an equation and say, well, yeah, my math says 1 + 1 = 41, so it must be true, right? And so they just automatically, with whatever means they want to decide to use to press their bullshit, they do it. The mainstream either follows, or they don't get grant money, they don't get research money, they don't get education money, yada, yada, yada. I mean, it's quite the system. We all know how it works, right? And it's really unfortunate that the rest of the world does not. But anyway, I know I'm going off on a tantrum here, but this is just really amazing that things like this actually still happen to this day. And it's even getting more and more insane, right? So that's why there are so many people that are afraid to, venture into the waters of the flat earth, so to speak, right? And Ken Wheeler's definitely one of those people. Like I said, he does technical writing for Apple Computer. He's done that for years. One of their top technical writers that they've ever had. What else does he do? He's a photographic and imaging expert, right? Yeah, Nikon contracts him all the time. He has every camera in the book. When Ken Wheeler puts his stamp of approval on something, I mean, people listen, right? They listen to him because they know he's the real deal. Is he a little strange? Yeah, he is. He's kind of weird looking, and he's kind of goofy. He's kind of a nerd. He's got all kinds of tattoos and weird looking and stuff like that. But you know what? From what I found, it's usually the people that look the most upstanding and really wonderful citizens that are the most pathologically insane, honestly. And it's the people that look a little different, act a little different, that are actually the real people. And you can look around that in this community and see that we have a lot of strange people in this community, right? I don't think anybody's going to deny that, right?
I'm one of them.
Yeah, so am I. And look at Jeran, for God's sakes. Oh my God.
Don't talk about your son like that.
I know, right? Yeah, and my son Jeran's another one. It's absolutely amazing. But it's all part of this image thing, right? And that's what they've done it to. It's all about how you look and how you act and the way you speak and all that. And if any of those things is even slightly off, well, then it's ammunition for them to pick on you, right? And it's just, unbelievable. And, well, it is the way it is, right? So what I was thinking is that, when David told me about this, I thought, my God, this is amazing, because I think, I'm not positive, but I think I was the first person to introduce the Flat Earth community to Ken Wheeler. Because I had been following him for a while, and I found him and I was just like, wow, this guy's amazing. And because at the time he was talking about the ether and 0 point energy and magnetism and, just some unbelievable stuff. And then you do a little bit of looking into his background. He's now writing his 4th edition, Secrets of Magnetism book. And I've got the 3rd edition, which was amazing. It cost me like $100 to go get it printed out. But it's a beautiful book, and it's got so much information in it. It's unreal. I can hardly wait till the 4th edition comes out. But so these are the kind of people that, they kind of have a lot to lose, but they can be such assets to us, to any truth seekers for that matter. But people like him are going to be high on the elite's radar because he is so credible in so many ways. And people know it, right? So I think that, when I first came across him, he always used to say, oh, I don't believe in this conspiracy crap. This conspiracy stuff is stupid. And yet, if you've listened to him over the past 2 years, the guy is fully aware of what's going on with the conspiracy crap. And he's actually started speaking out about it and being a little more vocal about it, right? All the while saying, I don't believe in conspiracy crap, right? Trying to keep some semblance of sanity, right? So people don't think that he's a conspiracy whack job. But nevertheless, the dude is way too smart to not see what is happening, right? And I honestly believe in my heart of hearts that he's also way too smart to not be able to see the truth behind the flat earth and the heliocentric lies. if it is all presented to him, in such a way that, it's not threatening, and we can actually do a good job at that. So when David came to me and said, we can get Ken Wheeler on, what do you think about that? And he said, you should probably do the interview because obviously, I'm kind of the technical guy in Globebusters. And I said, that's cool. But I told him, I think we left it at that point. And then he wrote me back and he said, Ken Wheeler's kind of strange because when I sent him my standard form that asks, people that are going to interview or we're going to interview, there's a question on there about, do you believe in the flat earth or what the shape of the earth is or something like that, right? And Ken refused to answer that question. And when David asked him why, he said, because it's a stupid question, right? Well, that kind of set off a few alarms with me because, again, I would love to have Ken's brain, or at least access to it in any way I could possibly do so, right? I mean, God, we could take up a GoFundMe campaign and keep him pizzas for the rest of his life, right? If he'll do that, or even to pay him for consulting. But in order to do that, we've got to get him to see things in the way that we do. And so one of the things that I've done in all the time that I've been studying Ken Wheeler is I listen very, very carefully to what he's talking about. Because let's face it, when he talks so high above so many people's heads that it's like, they just don't understand it. They know he sounds smart. They know that.
I unsubbed.
You what?
At first, I unsubbed.
Did you?
Because I couldn't understand him. Yeah, not until I went and learned a bunch of, the language. And then I went back and was like, oh, okay, this kind of makes sense now. Even though he still speaks at way higher level than I am. I get the gist of what he's saying.
He does.
Yeah,
he does.
Yeah,
and for him, it's funny because he will even say that, well, if you can't explain something simple enough that a child can understand it, then obviously you don't understand it yourself. And it's like, sometimes I want to say, hey, Ken, I got great respect for you, buddy, but you do not exactly explain things in such a way that everybody can understand it so easy. Because, I have to go off and I have to refer to other people. Fractal Woman has been a godsend. If you guys don't know her channel on YouTube, she has been a godsend in interpreting Ken Wheeler speak for me, right? And so when you have people like that are kind of putting together, what Ken is saying and putting it in more digestible type of verbiage, then all of a sudden people really see the elegance and the beauty and the intelligence of what he is saying, right? But other than that, he can be really, really confusing. So needless to say, even though I do not, and believe it or not, there's a lot of things that I don't agree with Ken on. And hopefully we're going to get that opportunity for me to air that out with him. But before we do that, let me get back to the story with David. David had said that, when he said it was stupid, that totally set off alarm bells with me. It's like, oh no, the last thing I want to happen with Ken Wheeler is this to turn into a freaking disaster, right? Like some of David's most recent interviews have, right? Because Ken Wheeler, I mean, a lot of flat earthers look up to him. A lot of people in the world look up to him. And the last thing that we want to do is put ourselves in a position where we are at odds with the guy, right? So I told David, I said, look, David, it doesn't sound to me like Ken really understands that we are a bunch of flat earthers, and that if we talk to him, we're going to be talking a lot of things in context of flat earth. For example, I really, really would like to show him, the model that Zack and I have been working on with, the Gaussian surface, show some of the other cosmologies that show that we are in an enclosed system and that we have these attributes that are exclusive to an enclosed system, like the equipotential lines of force at 100 volts per meter, so beautifully distributed all over the plane, right? You cannot get that in a heliocentric ball model. Not only that, the the pattern is wrong. The distribution pattern is wrong. It's completely different on a sphere than it is for two flat surfaces. Okay. You would have different voltage levels at not linear places for the equipotential lines of force. They would be more of a logarithmic type of thing. But I digress. Okay, so
Well, yeah, on a sphere, it would fall off at the inverse square law, 1 over r squared.
Yeah.
It would act as a point source if it were a sphere, but it doesn't.
That's right. But when you're dealing with a Gaussian surface, basically put together as a capacitor, and you have the Earth right in the middle of the dielectric and inertial plane, which Ken himself says is the only possible place that could ever support life. And believe me, I've got all those things queued up, right? You know, because he's right. I think that if we came out of this electric field that we are living in, we couldn't survive. It simply wouldn't work, because the power that powers this place that we're in, we're also dependent on it physiologically. Nature is dependent on it physiologically. It is what powers our reality. And believe me, our reality is not what a lot of people think it is. And I think a lot of people are really starting to understand that. And, you know, Ken, as weird as he may be, he's got a handle on this. And I think that if we can address him in such a way that he is not threatened, and that we do not necessarily, we don't want to, I mean, it would be great if someday he came out and said, yeah, I'm a flat earther, but, you know, somehow keep it where he's distanced enough from the community to be able to comment on our model work and our, you know, theories that we come up with that we're trying to apply to this model. My God, what an asset he could be, right? This is a guy that is an expert on exactly the things that we need to get our message out, right? I mean, not only is he an expert on magnetism, electricity, but the guy is a master, you know, photographer. He understands perspective. Probably one of the top people in the world that would have to understand that, right? He writes all the technical manuals for Nikon. He gets optics, right? He's just got so much to offer. And he, I think, really ultimately is looking for the truth, you know, like a lot of us. So I told David, I said, look, Dave, I'd love to have him on, but I don't feel comfortable about doing it unless he is also comfortable, unless he knows exactly what he's getting into, and that we can all, you know, come to some sort of an agreement on this and, you know, then talk, right? So what we decided we would do is, you know, we were going to just do it live, you know, right out of the box tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern. But instead, what we're going to do is we're going to record it. And the reason for that is because that'll give us a little bit of time that we can talk beforehand and, you know, kind of get the ground rules straight, if you will, and make it very clear to him that we're not trying to drag him into our crazy conspiratorial world. We are just looking for the truth, and we believe that his work can really support us in a lot of ways. So that's what I came up with. And I think that, so we're going to do is we're going to record it. And if there's anything that any of us feel shouldn't be in there, then we're always free to edit it. And it's not because we're trying to keep things from our audience. We are trying to, I mean, let's face it, guys, we know what the trolls are about. We know what the opposition is going to try and do. And the best, you know, the best that we can do to minimize that is to take a lot of precautions. So that's kind of where I was coming up, you know, with how I want to handle Ken Wheeler. Because like I said, even though I don't agree with everything he says, I have enormous respect for the guy. I really do. And, you know, because of his intellect and, you know, he seems like a pretty nice guy. He really does. But he's, you know, even in a lot of his latest streams, he's talking about, you know, I'm barely getting along as it is, you know, eking out a living, and he works all the time. And I think a lot of us can, you know, totally relate to that. The money just is not abundant for a lot of people. And the last thing that you want to do is, put yourself in a position where you're going to completely screw yourself out of anything, right? So I want to be very, very cognizant of that and, welcome him aboard. And even if he doesn't want to speak directly on a lot of this stuff, if we can use him as like a consultant on a lot of this stuff, if he would agree to do that. And then that way it kind of takes the pressure off of him to, as we're trying to explain what we see so clearly, what is so obvious to us, I know in my heart that he will be able to see it too. So what do you guys think? I mean, this seriously, Jeran, I think this is the best way we can handle it. Do you have any suggestions on it?
No, I think it's smart. I think it's the way I would go about it, just to see how his reaction is and make sure that he's not on the defensive, because then, and we know nobody can get this explained to them the first time and become a flat earther. So it's more something that we want to have that conversation with him, kind of put some of the thoughts out there and let him think about it. And I think that it's the best way to go about it.
Yeah. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to have some kind of episode. The trolls would eat that up, and then, yeah, I don't want him as any type of adversary. Even if he doesn't want to come out and say that the Earth is flat, he's an amazing brain to be able to pick if you have, just a question to throw his way every once in a while.
And again, he may have not seen the right model. He might just be thinking of flat Earth as a disk in space, right? And he's never looked beyond, so that every time somebody brings it up, that's where his mind goes. And that's why he says, I'm not entertaining that thought. It's stupid. So if he sees kind of what we're talking about, then from there, we can kind of determine. Because
I think he's definitely smart enough. He'll get it like that.
Me too. And some of the toroidal stuff, I think that it'll click. So it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah. Some people are saying Ken won't talk to us live. Actually, I think he will. But the first time, it's not going to be that way. We're going to pre-record it. He had already agreed to talk to us live. But, and all of this is on me, guys. This is all on me. And the way that I feel about Ken, and, how I want to protect him as much as I do us, right? Because he is the kind of person that, oh man, is he going to be a target, right? And I don't want to make that, such an obvious thing where it scares the hell out of him. And that's why I think, there's things that we can do. I mean, if he's having a hard time making a living, we can hire, like if we crowdfund some stuff, it doesn't have to be an enormous amount of money. We can pay him a consultant's fee, right? Where he can get on with maybe Austin and me, or, some of the more technical minds in flat Earth, and discuss these concepts with us and not have to go on camera or associate himself with it. But just kind of give us, his insight on it and let us run with there. Because honestly, I think, Zack and Austin and I have done a really good job of interpreting his work so far and how it applies to this place that we call our realm, right? And he is onto something. He is so onto something. And whether he knows it or not, it agrees with so many other cosmologies out there in so many ways. Not only cosmologies, but religious faiths, philosophies about where we're at. I mean, the guy, well, he's the whole package, right? So there you have it. And it looks like Mr. Austin Witsit has joined us. Hey, Austin, what's happening, buddy?
How's it going? My bad, man. I had a lot of stuff just pop up, but I've made it. And I would say my opinion on that is 100% better to just not have the pressure of it being live alone. Like, just the pressure of it would enhance the chance that he would be maybe more defensive, feel like he's on the spot. I think not having the pressure of live will just make it a more genuine convo,
Oh, I totally agree. Yep, I totally agree. So, and he may never want to actually, go live. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that we have his ear, right? And, there may be a point in time when enough people that are at least in his world are seeing what we're telling him, but also are seeing what he's seeing that's going on in the world, that there's this great darkness that has come over the world. And the only thing that we could do to combat it is to shine a big ass light on it, right? Well, I got news for you. Ken Wheeler is one hell of a bright light. And so that's why I feel that of all the people that we are trying to at least make them see, our viewpoint on it. I mean, I think honestly in his heart of hearts, he will understand, and he may even come around to our way of thinking. But if he never wants to admit that, I don't blame him. And who would, right? Look at the despair it's caused all of us, and all of this crazy shit that's going on.
Look at Brian Mullen.
Yeah.
But I think the win is just him acknowledging viability, like in specific terms, like viability of the dielectric plane being the Earth within the inertial plane, which is of course encompassed within the toroid if you apply magnetism to the flat Earth. Like his technical acknowledgement of viability is really all that I would say anyone should even hope for.
His input. In other words, Ken is a very smart man. He's a very eccentric man. And so anybody trying to tell him how anything works, he is somebody that figures out everything by himself. So I think the approach to sell him on flat Earth is entirely wrong. I think your approach to learn from what he has to gain that we can use in the flat Earth model is like the right example. I think Jeran did it really good when, and I was a bit confused when I got on the stream at first, but he interviewed the founder of PEX. And the founder of PEX is not a flat earther, and yet the founder of PEX has got very, very good info on crypto and how it works, and stuff that Jeran wanted to deem from. You can expose and plant seeds and let people go where they want, but that founder still, or that person that Jeran was interviewing, we had a lot to gain from him, or I think Jeran had a lot to gain, just like we would have a lot to gain from Ken Wheeler, regardless of what he thinks the model of the Earth is. He can, again, verify or, critique or give us different ideas of things that when you scale them, and even if you don't call it flat Earth, are the concepts sound, or the physics sound on it? Is it real? Will it work? You guys are talking about getting him, but I do have to warn you, if you get him in the area, me and Karen will try to steal him. And there's a good chance he'll go with us. Oh.
Well, we shall see, right? I mean...
Who's got the bigger I've got the bigger magnets.
Yeah, I think that she's...
I do.
Right. We want to leave it open, because it's that whole... And I think this is why they have sports, right? They have sports so that people get... used to being affiliated with a team, and then you only care about your team, and you want people to join your team, and you hate everybody on the other team. And that's just not the way that we should live. And it's not the way this was at the beginning. At the beginning of Flat Earth, for me at least, it was very much about open-mindedness, and that was celebrated. And now that's no longer celebrated. Now, if you don't conform to the truther rules, if you don't say that Kobe Bryant didn't die, and you don't say that, you have to conform to the new dogma of flat Earth, which is ridiculous to me. It's, it makes me further distance myself from the community. The more I feel like I'm locked into a belief system. It's the exact reason I got out of the previous one.
Exactly. So, you can't blame anyone. You can't even blame them for not wanting to come over there.
No, not
we
anymore.
Probably wouldn't have come over if we just found out about it. Like, a lot of us would have been more chill and maybe kept it to ourselves if we approached it and it was this dogmatic thing it kind of has grown into now. Because I wouldn't have. I would have been like, whoa. They lied, but I don't know. But I'm not going right back into some like dogma.
Correct. Yep. So I think with somebody like Ken, and this is just how I approach everybody, is I like to take the good and leave the bad. And it doesn't mean I don't care if somebody doesn't have the same belief about the Earth as me. They haven't gone through the things I have. They haven't seen what I've seen. Same as I haven't seen what he's seen. So to me, it's okay to introduce somebody to the idea, to expect them to be like, oh, you're right, the Earth's flat is insane. That would never happen. So we just want to introduce it to him, kind of give him some, and he might kind of hee ha ha, he might kind of laugh at it. But I think anytime you tell those people something, they then go forward. And as things pop up into their daily view and things that they're working on, I think he'll think back to some of these things. He'll remember back. He'll kind of go, wait, that's weird. They were saying this about and then if he understands the model a little better, then maybe down the road we have somebody who starts to be a real asset for the team. If we just go into it live and there's 4 or 5 of us and there's one of him and we're trying to show him this and he's just laughing at us, and I mean that's not going to be good. So I certainly don't want that to happen.
I think he maybe knows a little bit more. I mean, just like Bob's saying, you can't really blame him too much for not just jumping out talking about that a lot. He's on the fringe anyway whenever it comes to mainstream, right? He just calls out the pseudoscience of quantum mechanics and the assumption of materialistic particles and calls them the cult of bombarding particles. And he picks their thing apart so, precisely and strategically that really you can't rebut it. And he also talks about how no one understands magnetism. He's correct. He much more accurately describes magnetism and the subatomic scale, quote unquote, than anybody in the modern academia. And so that right there has already got a target on him. And so you can understand if he's so passionate about magnetism this long in his life, he's not just going to throw a crazy polarizing subject that's stigmatized on top of it. I won't even use the word flat earth, like dielectric plane earth or something, because that's what it is. It's a plane. And I don't know, I think.
Yeah, I always say 90 degrees perpendicular to the electric field earth.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
That's how I see it.
Like Cami was saying, I agree with her so much because she's just saying maybe more so just because we can all admit that dude is definitely smart. Just soak in what he's got to say and bounce off relevant things, maybe tactically presented. And I think that's just the move. No pressure to convert or anything like that. Or oh yeah, how do you explain this? Well, just, isn't it interesting that this could be a dielectric plane, right? And the movement itself is actually the toroid.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Could this work in a hypothetical situation? Are you saying it's this, but as a mind experiment, as a total thought game, you can think it's crazy and everything, but if you scaled this down and all of the stuff is scalar, let's just play thought experiments and not play this is reality at this point in the game.
I think that's a great way to go about it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so we don't.
Ken will say openly, an intelligent person can look at anything and think about it critically, without believing it. He'll take an honest look at it and have that thought experiment. I've heard him say it multiple times.
I've heard him say that too. Yes.
I thought I had a clip of him actually saying too that intelligent people don't look for the answers to things that they already think they know about.
That's true. Right. I've heard that a million times. He's definitely said that.
Yeah. So he's, and that's true. So, and I don't want to corner him and say, well, you're doing the exact same thing. But it's, if he were to start down there, it'd be good to remind him. Remember, you said that, if you already think you know the shape of the earth, you're not looking into the shape of the earth.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Let's see if I find that clip for, I'll bring it up. But I think it's right here. But I don't know where. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've been collecting clips just to kind of brush up on them because there's a lot of questions I have for him, and that'll be really cool. Now,
here's a question I have for him: if the Earth's a dielectric plane with a magnetic field, in that theoretically, do you think that you would be able to materially gain access to the center? That's what I want to know. What he would say. Do you think that I could go to the center of that toroid?
You wouldn't be able to. No.
Hypertoroid. No, the vortex. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say not because
no spot.
The hyperboloid actually, that's where you get into the non-physical part. Like a magnetic field is, when we put two magnets together, like the same pole, and they repel or attract each other, that is a non-physical thing going on there. We feel it. It feels physical and everything, but we cannot show any physical causation for that, right? So it's one of those things it's a little strange. And this, of course, is what, goes back to the luminiferous ether and the idea that there is this underlying fabric, in the universe. But you can't just call it, oh crap, what am I trying to say here? Well, I'll think about that and come back to it.
Well, ether isn't material, right? I would say
it's not physical, no, but it can become physical through basically cymatic process, like we've talked about.
I agree, but it's I think for sure, and maybe we would all agree, the center would prohibit material accessibility. But I guess the point is, I would love to hear him say it, right? I would love to hear him answer that, and what his insight would be. Because he's on such another level with magnetism, it's wild. and you have to catch up to him. I was just like, because then think about, well, isn't it interesting? It seems that area isn't accessible in the real world that we live in. You know what I'm saying? I
agree. Well, I'll tell you what,
well,
Austin, shoot me a list of questions before tomorrow night. I would say come on, but like I said, I don't want to have a million people in there. The reason I think it's perfect with just Jeran, David, and I is because, frankly, Jeran and David will balance me, because even though I don't show it all the time, when somebody pisses me off, I can really be a dick, right? and
It's
I
true.
don't, and I really, really, really want to take care of this, and be on my best behavior. And Jeran and David are very good diplomatically with that, and they can kind of keep everything on an even keel, while that will then allow me to kind of discuss and show concepts with Ken, and and then we all share in it and basically come away like this was a discussion. I'd like it to come across like it's a discussion of friends, even though we don't know him from Adam. But that type of comfortable type of discussion where nobody's feeling threatened, and nobody feels like they have to do any ad hominem attacks or anything like that. If I say something to Ken, like, you guys know how I feel about this gravitational downward accelerative force, right? I'm very passionate about it because I believe it's real. Ken has his own take on that, which is almost virtually identical. I think I word it a little bit different, but if I were to say something to him in the way that I'm seeing it and he disagrees with me, well, I'll just have to deal with that, right? And because sometimes egos can get in the way. And I will be the first to admit that, yeah, I have that problem occasionally. I think we all do at some point, but this is too important to bring egos into it. I really do believe that. And one other thing I do want to say, huh?
I was just going to say, just his input on that, that hypothesis, that theory would be great. Even if it is, he says, well, this is wrong. I want to know why it's wrong. And he's got the brain to be able to tell you why it's wrong, not just hand wave, dismiss it and say, nah. He'll actually say, well, it's wrong because of this. That's what I'm not hoping for, but if we are wrong, I'd love to know where and how we can, mold that into,
Mind we definitely want to be able to bounce things off of. Bob, do you want me to play that clip? I found it's about 3 minutes, and then I've got a minute later in it that he talks about something. If you want.
Oh, sure, fire away.
I don't know if I should share screen or not. Let's try, but there's an echo. Let me know.
Okay.
You see Ken's head there?
I do, yes.
Okay, see if there's
Switch
any
over to him.
Hey, let's talk about mathematicians versus scientists. A true Aristotelian / Pythagorean / Platonic scientist is someone who is in search of the truth, whatever that may lead him or her. Today's scientists, however, are actually not scientists. They are those who like to quantize and count. They are bean counters, but specifically we know them as what they really are, as mathematicians. And I am absolutely not against math. But let's make a really, really important distinction here, and it's something you've never been taught in high school or college, and then that is that math does not explain anything. It absolutely does not. You see, the ancient Egyptians, they were actually really good mathematicians. Yes, they were. They built amazing stuff that stupid human beings today attribute to aliens. Like, oh my God, that's amazing. Must have been made by aliens. But they were really good mathematicians. Yes, but their explanations were, of course, BS. Like Ra, the sun god, did this and it just, of course, it was BS. But their math was really good. They built stuff that even today we can't replicate. And of course, we actually have all these ideas in our heads, but ideas are also not explanations. They are not understanding. Here's a perfect example, and scientists love to talk about this. They'll actually talk about the Michelson-Morley experiment, but specifically the one that I hear most about is the dual slit experiment. It's about the phenomena and the characteristics, specifically the properties and attributes of light. However, the problem with this experiment, leaving out the math, is that it starts out with countless suppositions that are completely incorrect. about the nature of light, such that light is an emission, which it's not. Light moves from point A to point B, which it's not. Light is a particle, it's not. Light is a wave, which is not. Light is a wave-particle duality, which is not. By the way, there are no dualities in Mother Nature. Light has a speed, which it's not. Light is not an emission, by the way. Yeah, it's an ether perturbation modality. Specifically, it's a coaxial circuit. The so-called speed of light is actually a rate of induction. The so-called presumed photon, which actually is purely conceptual, does not exist at all. This is actually due to the rarefactions and compressions, i.e. the longitudinal pulse perturbations that actually make up the coaxial nature.
So I'll stop there for a second, but that that's so in line with a lot of what we say that it will be very interesting to hear him out. And then he says right there that what did he say at the very beginning? That it takes I'm going to hear it again because I just want to hear what he said at the very beginning.
Hey, let's talk about mathematicians versus scientists. A true Aristotelian.
All right. And then over here is where he gets into the intelligence of people with degrees.
Yeah, it actually follows the golden ratio. You look at that beautiful spiral golden ratio of these shells. That's fascinating. I was like, yeah, that's wonderful. Now can you actually tell me what the golden ratio means? No. I said, what is the golden ratio? Well, golden ratio is like spirals and, the things you see in nature. It's like, that's a description. That's not an explanation. Fools don't actually know. Intelligent people will give you a description. It's like, I got a college degree. It's like, good, you give me a good description, but you can't explain what it is.
I can.
The same thing with people with doctorate degrees in physics and astrophysics.
Jared, pause it for a second.
Give you a description.
Okay, I said I can. I want to really quick just kind of explain, what he's talking about when he talks about the golden ratio. Golden ratio is otherwise known as the phi ratio, right? And it is derived from a mathematical sequence called the Fibonacci sequence, where you take a number sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you add the first two digits together, and then you go up one marker place on the digit counter, add those together, so you'll have 1, 1, 2, 3, okay, and then 3 and 2 is 5. And then 6 and 2 be 8. You see what I'm saying? It's a mathematical progression that if you plot it out on a spiral, what you start seeing is indeed something like a cornucopia or a phi spiral. A spiral, they call it a phi spiral actually. And what is so amazing about it is it is applicable to everything in our world. Most people have never heard about the Fibonacci, or actually the phi ratio, unless like you're an artist and you take training in art. And it basically is a ratio that is 1 to 1.618 to 1. And what that ratio means is that's the perfect conjugate ratio for everything that is created in nature. If you look at at your hand, right, and you look at the different places where you have joints in your hand and on your fingers, and you actually measure those, you will see that those ratios actually conform to a 1.618 to 1 ratio over the previous digit, right? You see it in a spiral, you see it in seashells, you see it in, well, like nebula, whether or not that's true. I don't know what's going on out there.
Flowers.
Pine cones, flowers, sunflowers. I mean, the proportions of your body. If you are a beautiful person, you can actually take a very beautiful man or a beautiful woman, and you can take apart their face and look at the ratios of their eye separation to their nose, to their mouth, where they're placed, their ears. And
I gotta look this. I thought this was debunked a long time ago.
Oh God, no! This is absolutely true.
If you take the golden ratio and you put it against somebody's face, it never matches. And if you put their eyes where the golden ratio says, they would be the ugliest being of all time.
No. But you have to understand where to reference it from, Jeran. That's the thing. And I can come up with some material for that, and I absolutely will. I'd be more than happy to do that. But
yeah, show me, because I thought that like the Pantheon that was something that when you actually put the real golden ratio to it, it's way off. And all the buildings that they say, I thought it was like something known to be debunked by now.
No way. No way has it had been debunked. And not only that, like I said, artists are trained to when they're putting together, like if they're painting a picture, to get the perspective and the size ratios correct in whatever it is they're trying to portray, actually makes a huge difference in how it appeases the eye. It's kind of like the Sophageo scale as compared to the diatonic, right? Whatever it is about the diatonic scale seems to be much more resonant than the diatonic scale. It is more soothing, more comfortable. It's more building. It's, it's kind of like your rice experiment, right? All of these things, all of them go back to the Fibonacci sequence, which of course then creates the phi ratio, the 1.618 to 1, essentially. And you see this proportion everywhere, in everything. And it's truly amazing. People just really, and I'd be happy to show this to you, Jeran, but no way has this been debunked.
Yeah, that alone, though, like just absolutely destroys atheism, like even the claim of such a thing.
Yeah, I heard a biology professor at Yale. This was back in 2011. This is what woke me up to like everything right here, as far as spirituality, because I was a full-blown atheist, NASA fanboy, and when I heard this guy talking to another college professor about why haven't we been taught this in any level of education, he was a Yale professor, high accreditations and all. He said, I'd never even heard of this, the whole Fibonacci sequence and all this stuff. So yeah, this is something that
Marty
they
Leeds
don't
is
even
another
teach.
one. Marty Leeds is another one.
Yeah,
that
Marty
goes
breaks it
deeply
down
into
great.
the Fibonacci. It is so embedded in our realm. I mean, it is literally everywhere, and where you find it, you typically find perfection. Not only mathematically, but physically, energetically. What else can you say? I mean, you could spend your life studying it, and the ancients knew this. They knew this, absolutely. And this is something, that's why they don't ever teach you about stuff like that now. Just like they don't want you to know about magnetism. They don't tell you about the phi ratio and how it is so important, and that it's found everywhere and what it actually means. There's a guy named Dan Winter that he was working with a place called the Heart Math Institute. And when you can get your heartbeats by focusing on them to go into a phi ratio in the heartbeat themselves, that the energy coming out of the heart, it becomes huge, absolutely enormous, because it enters into this physical resonance that is, transferable to everything that we perceive. So, and I just don't know how else to talk about it. It's one of the most amazing things ever, Jeran. You really should look into it, for sure.
Yeah, I remember looking and seeing that it just wasn't what people said, and when I see people lying about something, then I just turn it off. So they fake it when they put it on top of the Mona Lisa, or when they put it on top of the Pantheon, whatever the building's called.
Well, how people are. They don't know sometimes they don't know what the hell they're talking about, and they'll just start. You know how people are.
Well, this is just like I look at Zeitgeist. The reason that they did that, they did such a good job covering 9/11, but then they muddied the waters with the whole like Jesus thing and part truths but not truths. That way, everyone throws the baby out with the bathwater. So the reason I don't think they want mainstream acknowledgement of sacred geometry, golden ratio, etc., is because it literally outlines the inevitability of design. And it's just harder to control people if they think that there's an ultimate authority that transcends the material world. So I wouldn't be surprised if they watered down the golden ratio, because they do that a lot. It's really effective controlled opposition,
So you mean because you're saying that because it does match some sort of God-like thing, that's why they're attacking it?
Well, not even a specific God or anything like that, but just the ratio itself shows that it had to be designed, like from the micro to the macro, to have that exact proportionate layout of energy, right? I mean, there's some type of order, intrinsic order, that is required for that to happen. So it's like proof of a designer. I mean, it can't even offer a viable alternative. I mean, for the equal dispersion of energy to be on the micro to the macro requires a designer. I'm just saying in general, if people acknowledge a designer, and that's why they lie with so many religions, because they want to control that too. Because it's harder to control someone if they know that there's a designer, an ultimate creator, because that means that's the ultimate authority. And they don't want you acknowledging an authority other than them, of course, or whatever they want you believing in at the time. So I think that's what I'm saying. Not any specific religious denotation or anything, just the acknowledgement of the designer being required for that ratio. Okay, it would be, it should be the most hostile thing ever.
So if you take one of those golden ratio pictures that shows it and you lay that over a shell, it doesn't match up. So they just say it does, but it does not. If you measure it, it does not. So to me, that is kind of debunking it. Why would they tell us there's a golden ratio if shells don't conform to that? Neither do buildings, neither people's faces.
Because there are variances. There are definite variances. Like I said, it is the standard for perfection. If somebody's ugly, honestly, and it's funny, if somebody's really ugly and they're all disproportionate, it's amazing how these ratios of their eyes and nose and mouth and ears and all of this stuff are just wrong, right? Like they're mongoloid or something. It's really interesting. Now, one thing that like the mystics will say about this is that, we express what we know about the phi ratio, and it's expressed based in a mathematical God, what's the thing I'm trying to say? And a mathematical expression that is imperfect, right? In other words, the Fibonacci ratio is like, it's like pi, right? It's ongoing. It goes on and on and on and on forever, right?
Yeah.
But the Fibonacci sequence also changes because as you keep adding those numbers together, right? And you plot them together. Let me see if I can actually, well, now I'll get back to that. I'll bring up a chart and show it how you plot. I'll show you how it plots out. But yeah, it's basically that God made the phi ratio and embedded the phi ratio into our reality, and mankind and computers can only approximate that perfection by things like the Fibonacci sequence. It's an approximation of something that is endless. The actual ratio itself changes constantly, right? And you really have to think about that for a while to really understand it. And it's the difference between our level of understanding and creation and whoever the creator is, right? There's a big difference. So I don't know. And of course we could do a whole show on that, and I'd love to, honestly. But the bottom line is that it is expressed in everything, every part of creation. And all of that comes, by the way, when you start studying into cymatics, you learn about the things called the Platonic solids, right? And the Platonic solids are basically 5 shapes or 7, depending on how you want to look at it, that are based from the phi ratio or the Fibonacci sequence that when put together can create a digital approximation that is so close to analog reality that it's really quite amazing. And in fact, it's how a lot of computer graphics work, right? So, yeah, there's just a lot to say about it.
I had a question the other day about computer graphics that's weird to me. How come in a drawing program, have you ever noticed that if you draw a square, it doesn't look like a square? If you go, say, 250 pixels by 250 pixels, it's always looks like a rectangle. Do you know why that would be on a computer? If you take any drawing program,
because of the aspect ratio, probably.
But it shouldn't be. I mean, so for instance, if I grab an image here, let me maximize this, and this is just a regular 16 by 9 image. So I'm going to take this out. Okay, and I'm just going to draw a square, and I'm going to make sure that it's the right amount of pixels. Let me make it a little bigger. Let's go like 20. Okay, so if I draw a square here, and this is going to be, let me see here if I can get it exactly right. Okay, so this is, put it up here to start it. Okay, so from there down, this is right here is going to be, I'm looking at my numbers over here, so it's 549, so I need to go 549 across. We are at 549 here. 551, 52, 53, 40, 50. One more. 43, 46. Okay, there. So that's a square, but that does not look like a square. Why not? Because it looks like it's taller than it is wide, doesn't it?
Yeah, but that's probably just our perspective. If you measure it, it's probably right on the, well, you did. It's right on the money. So
something's wrong with computers that the pixels one way are not the same as the pixels the other way.
No, Jeran,
No.
what it is, Jeran,
The
is
shape
you're
of the
looking.
screen.
It's the shape of the screen. When you have the rectangle on the outside, it's closer to the top and the bottom than it is to the side, so it's creating the illusion of being higher. That's just entirely optical illusion. If you take a ruler and measure it across and up and down, you should measure the same, unless you think your
So if you do,
ruler is
you
going
see
through
my-
the lens contraction. So
That-
measure your
but
square in
you said
inches.
about the sides. I'm just wondering, you talking about the sides of this box or this one?
Whatever one you're direct comparison to. Now go ahead and make that other box again. Give it an equal border around it, and I think you'll see it go square.
Yeah, I'm saying this still looks taller to me than it is wide. No matter if I do that or do this, it still looks taller than wide. It's just me. Maybe it's my eyes.
I think it's the aspect. I think it's again that you're looking at the screen itself, the aspect, the whole like window screen that you're looking at. Did you try taking a measuring device and measuring
on the
in
screen itself.
not in pixels, but yeah, in ruler? Take a ruler on the screen and see.
Let me see. I can
Even a
go-
physical ruler on the screen.
Okay, I get go to right here. Let me see this side. No, it's clearly this side is longer. Here, look, I'll grab it like this. I'm going to grab this piece here. I'm going to cut that
Copy
out.
it. Yeah,
Yep.
copy it and lay it on top of each other in the other direction.
Okay, so copy.
There's a lot of different ways to
Okay, now I'm going to paste it, and then paste, and I'm going to spin
rotate it.
There. It's longer. See? Whoops, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
The same.
I think you're dealing with because I'm not even seeing it longer like you do, but I also only see out of one eye.
I think you're
So I
right. I
think
think it's the
different.
whole screen.
well,
If you had a square
can- a
screen, it
screen.
would look square, I bet.
Right.
here-
That your monitor is rectangular, your screen is rectangular. It's not just the
It
little
just-
border on the outside. It's
I'm tripping out now
It's
because
low.
I just measured it with I have a tape measure here. And how
Uh-huh.
can the tape measure is wrong? Hold on. So I'm measuring the side.
The
Can't
tape
see me. I'm measuring with the tape measure. So it's down the left side exactly 6 inches. And now I'm measuring across the bottom. And it is, well,
6 inches.
You're right. It might be, it's like 6 little piece, little tiny, the tiniest.
Yeah, I
Right,
really
huh?
think it's entirely optical illusion on that one.
it is.
Because
And
of screen. Yeah.
there's something
get it.
else.
And I think it's interesting. I think you see it more than I do, seeing with 2 eyes than 1 eye. By
Maybe
the
because
way.
this is much taller than wide. Really.
It's not to me. It's not to me at all. But again, I don't have binocular eyesight. I have monocular, so I think that might change it.
Maybe. And then Bobby, you're saying something else about it's irrational.
Ooh,
Right?
someone said turn your head sideways, Jeran, and see if it changes.
It does.
It's a good idea.
When I turn my head sideways, then it looks like a square.
Okay, yeah. It's your monitor and stuff messing with you. It's a optical.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, so it's just an optical illusion because it's a rectangular screen.
Right. And all your rectangular screen, and you have your rectangular windows. Even putting a little box on it is not enough to overcome, especially if you've got a wide screen that that whole
It's squared up with
base-
everything.
yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, Bob, let's do a show on the golden ratio and I'll look into it more rather than I just dismissed. I remember seeing this video that showed like these 3 types of plants have this certain ratio, but then it showed all the other plants, and all the other plants have very different ratios. Some 2-to-1, some 3-to-1, some 4-to-1. So it's like they were saying, well, what they basically did is they found the 5 or 6 plants or flowers that match the golden ratio, and they use those as evidence to the golden ratio, but they forget that there's 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 other plants that do not. So
Right.
how is it? Right. So how is that anything important if you can only find a few plants that match it?
Well, because it's not just plants. It's everything. And like I said, if you go to art school and you study how to create like paintings and stuff like that, so that's one of the most important things. Well, one of my best friends,
Yeah, but hold on. Just because I understand it's aesthetically pleasing, and they say like if you give a group of students a bunch of rectangles, they'll pick the one that's the golden ratio. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you only have 5 plants that match it, but you have 1,000 plants that don't, then I'm saying how is that part of the design of the earth? God only chose those 5 plants to make
because
the same as.
Because it's a base template. Things vary off the base template, and they vary off the base template for a variety of reasons. The environment that they're in, the environment that they were created in, grow up in, you know. I mean,
gotcha. It's like,
And it's usually just a certain part of the plant. It's the flower of the plant. It's not like the leaves on a tree or the leaves going up the stalk so much. It's the flower part where the golden ratio is more prominent and shown. So if they're showing you leaves of some other part of the plant and not the actual flower of the plant, then yeah, that's not going to have the golden ratio.
Well, that's why you need to take an aerial view of the tree. You know, like it's they're not perfect, but it's that same cymatic pattern. It's as if all material was created with a similar frequency, and there's a
spiral
distribution of mass. Yeah, spirals, exactly, just like the energy does over the earth.
Okay, I can sit here and I can argue at both sides because I was scanning back and forth on the computer while you guys were doing it. And Jeran, I do see your point. What it looked a lot to me is, and I have again the good and the bad, mostly good on like a Marty leads or that where you feel like you can pull numbers out of everywhere. And Marty, I say Marty because he's the only one I follow in gematria. Most of the people lost me and I thought we're going nowhere. And I have a huge respect on because I've learned from him. And so you have it done in ways like Marty does that's credible. But like anything else, you can lay the template on, like when I was looking at faces, you can certainly lay the template on a million ways and it doesn't work. And if you measure the distances between like the eyebrows, in other words, you can pick different places that would match perfectly the golden ratio. Like again, the eyebrows are different versions of it in comparison to this and say, this is ideal. But what about all the places that you can put the ruler and say, well, this is between this cheekbone and this, what ratio is that? You could argue both sides of this entirely because you can find examples of both. When you look at nature and see, just watch it grow, watch rocks grow, watch plants grow, watch anything, watch people grow, even starting the way that our cells divide and the way that, like with the rocks and that, the elements come together and the way the plants, again, each has their own way of growing and they do it in some beautiful symmetry. And that usually as they're starting off, there's more symmetry. And as they hit the elements and the wind and that, you'll get more random. But you do find the perfect mathematical examples and them existing out there in quantity, and especially, again, in your micro areas of it where it's a more controlled environment, maybe less affected by external forces out there, to see that repeating pattern. And even if you don't call it the phi ratio, however you see it and see things pattern, how they grow, it proves intelligent design. It proves creation. It proves non-randomness entirely. Even our randomness has intelligent design to it, especially our chaos and our randomness has intelligent design to it. And I think that's some of the most profound.
Yeah.
That our intelligent design would not work without the chaos. The chaos is what.
Yeah, and another thing.
That's everything. It makes the pressure mediation.
Yeah, and another thing you have to understand is that we deal in today's world. We deal in things in basically 2 states, either an analog state or a digital state, right? And what does that mean exactly? Well, say for example, on a computer, if I draw a circle, right, and I draw, get out my old digital compass and I draw as perfect of a circle as I can. And then I take an actual compass with a pencil in it and a piece of paper on my desktop, and I draw a circle on that piece of paper. Now, which one do you think really represents the circle better? And before you answer that, what you need to think about is this. The digital representation of that circle is incorrect. It is only an approximation. Why is that? Because when you digitize things, you are basically only sampling a portion of them, right? So, in other words, instead of having the fluidness of the circle that is obvious there when you use a pencil and compass, as compared to when you draw that circle on a computer screen and then you zoom into it, you will see that because it is processed and is displayed in pixels or in binary digits, that it is only getting a piece of the picture, right? So when God created everything, that is, he did so in analog. Everything is analog. There, there is no empty space in between things, so to speak. And I don't even know if this is going to come across right. But
I have
when a computer
two
does it, hang on a
fabulous
second.
examples.
When
Yeah.
the computer does it, again, things are being sampled. That's why when CDs came out initially, a lot of people really didn't like CDs because they said that there was a lot of fidelity missing in CDs. And even though CDs had clearly better signal to noise ratio, they lost a dynamic of the sound that the old vinyl albums had, right? And I find that interesting, but you get the point, right? When you're dealing with sample, and that's why when you take a higher sample rate of something, then the resolution sounds more and more and more like analog, right? So nature or God created an analog, and man, everything that we do, we're turning the world into a digital construct. And this is where this whole idea of us becoming Borg and everything becoming AI is coming from. And believe me, that is exactly what they're trying to do. You're trying to take away and remove God's perfection and replace it with an approximation based out of mathematics. Just like even though Fibonacci is the base sequence for discovering the phi ratio, they will never, ever be the same. Do you guys understand that?
Yeah, I agree. I'll actually even say that's one of the fundamental reasons I would never be able to wrap my mind around simulation theory, because it seems more of a digitalized inference. I guess it doesn't have to be because it's pretty undefined, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, it's just finite human attempt to describe the geometric ratio. I think the part is that there's a geometry that is in everything. So it's like there's a geometric pattern with a spiral that is typically evenly proportioned. And we could sit here and talk all day about, well, how do you balance what the matter is relative to the energy input, relative to the ether? What would the actual phi sequence be? What would, it's a crazy conversation. We're not talking about the integration. We're basically talking about the production of the material world. So it's a pretty crazy thing, but we see the geometric stamp everywhere, I think, is the overall part. And they don't really want people to know that, because that would mean that there's a designing energy behind the material world.
Right.
So
I have another aspect to add, because I work on trying to do models in the background, and I try to work in analog, which again because it doesn't produce digital work, it's not popular for YouTube. But on what he's saying on analog and digital, I can give you some real world examples on what would mess you up. You see me play with Polaroid filters all of the time, and you take a filter and you black out light, and you add another filter and it adds in light. In the digital world, it does not work like that. In the digital world, when you add a filter, it takes out light. You add another filter, it takes out more light. It doesn't ever start to.
Yeah,
you don't add filters, and
what's that anomaly called?
Not Bell's theorem.
Bell's theorem, right? Or Bell's, is it theorem or Bell's?
I think it's Bell's theorem.
Okay, yeah, but it's a definite anomaly, right? It's something that works in a digital world, but not an analog world.
It doesn't work. No, it's something that only works in an analog world and not in a digital
All right,
world. In
the
other
other way
words, if
around.
I added, right. So in other words, it works in reality, but if I was trying to model polarity on a computer, which is why I don't do it. If I was trying to model these filtering on a computer, it would not work out, nor could it work out for me the way it does in reality. If you start overlapping more than one polarized field, all of a sudden the computer does not render it the way that reality does. It's a mismatch between an analog and a digital world. When I create holograms using the miroscope, like with the theory that if the firmament is a vault of looking glass is going to be a natural holograph emitter, when you emit these holograms from a miroscope or a physical object or reality, guess what? That hologram transfers things like temperature. That hologram is cold. Digitally, you wouldn't know that, would you? You're creating just an optical visual. You're not creating a analog phenomenon. You can't create that digitally. You can't get it to pass over the real things that are there in reality, that if you're trying to emulate in a digital world, they don't pass through.
Yeah.
And like your pixels, you can't get your true circle. Even if you look at your pixels, they're little squares. Your little squares don't render to a circle. You made it all very fancy terms, but if I go up there, I see that it's a whole bunch of little bitty squares that don't make a circle. That's not reality.
Exactly. Were you going to say something, Jeran?
Nope.
And I've done for a while. I'm sorry, but it did.
Okay.
But yeah, I thought what you said was accurate, and it's so important with what we're looking at to take it away from the digital world sometimes, because a lot of the things in reality don't transfer.
Right.
And I think they trick us into thinking it does.
And we can play the rest of that in just a second, Jeran. I do want to say one thing, because, you know, as this discussion broke out, I just wanted to point something out that, you know, there's some people in the chat that were, you know, getting annoyed with Jeran because he wasn't seeing what we were explaining, right? And I got to tell you guys something about that. This is exactly what I want to avoid with Ken Wheeler. Now, let me tell you what I know about Jeran now that I've known him for about 7 years. And I understand the way that he thinks, and I understand the way I think, and I know that we're very different sometimes in the way that we think. And believe me, we've had some real humdinger arguments over some of our concepts, right, Jeran?
Absolutely.
But the thing is that he's right in what he's saying, because he's looking at it from a different paradigm. And sometimes that particular paradigm is not so obvious to other people. And just like when we're seeing something, we're saying, oh my God, how can you not see that? It's so obvious. Guys, that's the whole thing. Everything is not obvious to everybody in the same way. And that's something that we really need to be a lot more tolerant of. And, you know, I think Jeran and I get along so well because of that, because Jeran is more of a creative, free thinker. I am more of a logical, progressive type of thought person. And we see things differently, but we have been helpful to each other in so many ways that it's like, I don't know what I'd do without him, honestly. And, you know, and so just try and keep that in mind when you're criticizing people for not getting things that you yourself see, because it just may be that they have one hell of a strong point, you know?
Yeah, he did have a good point, actually, right? He pointed out the
agree.
Yeah, and it's crazy because it's easy to be on the computer and be like, oh man, Jeran, how do you? But a lot of times when you guys don't know things that we're talking about, you get to sit back in silence and try to learn about it, and then you fully learn it. And then, you know, Jeran is confident enough in himself where at live time he speaks his mind and he questions things, which is the beautiful thing that has actually led us to figure out about the earth, right? So I don't know. I think that's people come at me about Jeran because they think I'm supposed to like hit him over the head with the Bible. I'm like, I like our relationship about that and how he questions things and makes me double think things. Like it's a good thing. So I just think it's easy. Maybe people should step back and think about, well, you're not actually live saying your thoughts out loud as you think about them, working through them, and still being honest enough to not just conform into what everyone else there thinks. So that's my take.
Yeah, that's a great point, Austin. It really
Yeah,
is.
exactly. Jeran
Yeah,
is not the one that's just going to go along to get along with what people are saying.
Oh God, no.
I've heard him call out so many people. Yeah, just like, I don't get that. That's bullshit.
And
Yeah.
honestly, that has caused problems a few times between me and Jeran. It's like, God damn it, Jeran. You just want to beat each other over the head.
I frustrate a lot of people. You can imagine how much of a saint my wife is. So if you look at this, am I still sharing?
Yep, you are.
So what I was trying to get across is this is the Nautilus shell, right?
Right.
And if you lay the golden ratio over it, I can't get it to match. So I don't.
Bob,
I guess
it's not on the screen.
Yes, it is.
Oh wait, what? I guess I don't get it because somebody needs to explain to me why. How do I shrink this down to make it match? It doesn't match. It doesn't conform to the golden ratio. So if this is the mathematical golden ratio, this black piece here, then I don't understand how they say the shell matches it if you can't rotate it in any way to get it to match. It always goes off of the. Now, if you're talking about self-similarity, yeah, the Nautilus shell has a self-similarity where it's basically becoming one of itself, and it's creating a pattern out of that, but it's not the golden ratio. The golden ratio is this box here, and it doesn't really match many things. There is a couple flowers that match it, but not all of them. And so when I hear people say it's everywhere in nature, well, why isn't it as part of this shell?
And you know what? That is an outstanding point, because you make a good point there. You really do. It's not the same. We're looking, so in terms of this, I could easily say, well, the mathematically derived golden ratio is perfection, right? Because mathematically it's derived that way, and it doesn't match the physical reality. But
hold on, Jeran, mirror that one, like flip it over the other way, so the spiral goes the other way.
The box or the shell? This or the shell?
The box, if you can.
Box, make it so like a mirror image. No, like it's completely flipped over, where you flip it over.
Yeah, I did. This is a mirror image of it.
No.
Wait, here's mirror. This is where it was, and then
Right.
Mirror. Or do you mean flip it?
Like top to bottom, where you like
go
you'd
left to
actually
right, go
take
left to
the paper.
right.
You're gonna not wiggling around it. It's got to actually like you'd flip the piece of paper.
You need to
over.
rotate it
That way
270 degrees.
Not a rotation, it's a flip.
Okay, so look, here's where it was, flip, and then I just hitting flip. So you mean this way, and then get it to match?
Well, so
no, the spiral's got to go the other way, right there. See, the loop's got to go from the center to the left, not the center to the right.
You mean this way?
Yeah.
Or go now, flip it.
No, but you now flip it. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, got you. So see, it does come off of it. So this is just I get confused is when people say it's the golden ratio. I get that you're talking about self-similarity and repeating, and that does happen in everything in creation.
Fractal, you bet it does.
Yeah, fractal for sure. Right. But as far as it being the golden ratio, if you take this thing and lay it over anything, it rarely matches.
Yes.
Well, it's very difficult to put it in the perfect spot, though, bro. Like where's the actual center of this thing? Right.
I think you were pretty close where you had it. That was.
Yeah, it was pretty close when it was conforming to this line.
Well, I agree with you, though, by the way. I'm not saying I don't. I'm just saying, like, I would never take this approach overall, because I don't think I could even. Yeah, you can try to get the line, but that line's pretty thick. So where does the black line fit within the white line? I don't know. But it doesn't sit well with me, but I don't think that it's perfect everywhere. Maybe you would find out that it's not technically exactly perfect anywhere, and it's just like all of them are on their way to that pattern. I don't know. I think there's a deep truth behind it when it comes to actual matter. So I don't know.
We should do a show on it and give me some time to actually look into it rather than just on the fly and not even knowing we're going to talk about that.
That's good. Yeah, because we're kind of getting off the topic a little bit. But
yeah, and in the past when I heard about it, I just always dismissed it because I said, no, they're just saying that. And actually, I thought it was more of like a mathematics thing where they were trying to say, mathematics is perfect. So it's very easy for me to dismiss, and then I'll have to go back and look at them.
Okay, so do you want to play the rest of that?
Sure. Did I stop it open? Yeah, I'll play just a little bit because it's a good little staple mix here.
Okay.
People with doctorate degrees in physics and astrophysics. Yeah, they can give you a description and they can give you the math, but they can't actually explain to you what's going on or why it's going on. It's like, well, yeah, I love your math, and the math is not up for you to dispute. Now let's get on to the important stuff, which is where the whys are interested in dwelling, and that is in explanations, not descriptions. By the way, the golden ratio, the explanation with the golden ratio is the self-similarity of the one to itself, because, of course, the one in extrapolation is the reason why the Fibonacci sequence starts out with 1 and 1, 1, 1. 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, et cetera, et cetera. It is the self-similarity. In other words, it's the perfect proportionality of one to itself. That is what the golden, and it's people love, by the way, to say golden ratio. And like, yeah, it's wonderful. I've heard you say golden ratio many times, but can you tell me what the explanation of what the golden ratio actually is and its importance? Well, no, I can't do that. Why do you keep talking about golden ratio? Well, because you keep seeing it as like beauty in nature. Now, this is a description. That's not an explanation, actually. Explanations are paramount. And by the way, it's okay not to know the answers to things, but the stupidity, specifically the ignorance or agnosis, comes into the point in which you have a person with a degree or that is highly educated yet a moron. And this is a huge difference between empirical knowledge, i.e. episteme, and gnosis, is that intelligent people who think they know the answers to things do not ever go looking. This is so important. You need to remember this. This is so effing important, and you weren't taught this crap in school. Intelligent people that think they know the answers to things have never gone looking for the answers to things that they already think they know the answer to. And this, of course, is part of their hubris. A word everybody should know, by the way, Hubris. Hubris. Repeat after me. The word hubris. Let's spell out hubris. Dumbass. Hubris. You don't go looking for the answers to things you think you already know the answer to. This is called academic hubris. I got a degree. I know what's going on. Oh, you mean you went home and you memorized some crap and you took a multiple guess test and you got an A on it and they said, yeah, we have certified you that you believe in the same crap that we do because we were taught the same crap and we got a PhD on the weather. We have certified that you believe in the same silly BS that we believe in. Here's your degree.
I'll end it there. But I mean, that's what I believe about a lot of this stuff, and it's
me too.
We've seen
He's
it with
nuts
doctors.
on when he says that. He is absolutely nuts on when he says that.
And it's the way they control the world, really, is that if you teach people that are smart or that they're smart by teaching them all something dumb, then they will think they're the smart, and then they won't even look into any other category because they'll be like, I'm not smart in those other categories. So how do you defer to those people? Well, those people have been taught dumb things, so they all think they're smart, and you always have these people. That's why we don't have very many. He's maybe one of them. These people who know many subjects. What am I trying to think of the word? A polymath, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who is skilled in many areas. Doesn't really exist now as much as it did back in the past, because now they focus you into one area. So you're a surgeon, you're a astrophysicist, you're a chemical, whatever. And it's just, that's your area of expertise. And you don't even really dare talk about things outside that because you consider yourself the authority in one subject. That's where people should come considering that subject. So you feel the same about everybody else.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't their subject.
The thing about that is so absurd, Jeran, is because they have reshaped the world like that, where everybody is so incredibly specialized, that now we have physicists that do not communicate with so-called astrophysicists because they have completely different paradigms of physics. It's like, what the hell? It's like, well, we don't know anything about that, but we know this. And so this is what we're saying it is. And then the physicists are saying, but that violates everything we know about physics. How can you justify that? And it doesn't matter because the astrophysicists have already been given the label of expert. Therefore, that's who you listen to. And it's just ridiculous, right? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I would be amazed to think that he doesn't know any discrepancies about the Earth, just personally. So, because I actually have been in his chat and I was talking to him about the intricacies and technicalities of what he had been talking about. And I just worked in like, I mean, the Earth would be the dielectric plane, though, pretty clearly, right? And, he started reading it out loud and stopped. And all I'm saying is, I know it's not like all this has eluded his, his mind this whole time. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I don't know. Unless he just doesn't see that same thing he's describing going on with him. But I think it may be deeper than that. And it has to do with being tactical about what he says.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. And a really good example of this too, by the way, Austin, is and it's so funny because it affects us right here in the Globebusters. It's kind of changing, but flat earthers in general is this whole subject of gravity, right? Oh my God. Half of the community is charged about it. Well, let's say the whole community is charged about it on two different sides of the fence. And people like me are looking at it saying, look, gravity doesn't exist. All you need is buoyancy and density. And I look at it like, look, I understand that, but buoyancy and density don't work without that initial force that's causing this bias. How can you not see that, right? And I know you see that. I know Zack sees it. Jeran's definitely been coming over to see that more and more and more. But then you have people like, Nathan Oakley and stuff, and a lot, not just them, but a lot of people that really believe that it's as simple as that, and that's all there is to it. And it's like, no, that physics is about understanding why things happen, not just, necessarily coming up and saying, well, that's the way it is, so down things go down because that's the way the creator made it. Well, yeah, that is the way the creator made it, but what was the mechanism behind that? To me, that is such an obvious question to ask. And I see that as, how can the rest of the world not be asking that question, right? And of course, the ballers are on the same, even though the ballers think that it's mass attracting mass, they're asking the same thing. They're saying, well, you can't just say this is the way it is. There's got to be at least a reasonable hypothesis, and if you can demonstrate it, that's even better. And that's one of the beautiful things about, this particular idea about the downward force and being a component of electrostatics, is that we can demonstrate it. And Zack has demonstrated it. We can turn that freaking polarity upside down, and we can make things heavier. We can make things lighter. We can make things jump right to the roof of that construct of our Gaussian plates, right?
And you guys got to remember too, I know it's little tiny pieces that I'm moving, but if it's all scalable, electricity is scalable. If it were the size of the earth, I would be moving bigger than mountains with the little pieces that I'm moving.
Exactly. And that's,
So
I said that a long time ago. All of this is scalable. That's the beauty of electricity. And, plasma, electricity, this type of physics is it's the same macro as it is micro. And that's a beautiful thing, because that gives us a really powerful tool to be able to demonstrate things with. And so the trick is in explaining it in such a way that people can relate to. And as much as I don't like Anthony Riley, he has figured out a way with his dumbass experiment of his, that you guys have seen him do. And I look at that and I think that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. And other people look at that and they go, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I'm like, what? So again, people look at things very differently. And I'm sure there's going to be things like that with Ken, but in Ken's case, it is very, very important to me that we don't go down that road, that we respect each other, and that we find a way to bridge the communication gap, right? And I think if you really try hard enough, you will. And so there you have it, And as far as the rest of the community, again, I'm never going to bring over 100% of the people to the way that I think, and neither is the Oakley crew or anything like that. And by the way, that's a whole nother other thing, right? Is one of the biggest proponents, one of the biggest, minds in the Flat Earth Debate group is, of course, John Stunja, which is Quantum Eraser. And just by the title of his screen name, Quantum Eraser is one of the most famous experiments in quantum physics, right? That and the double slit experiment, stuff like that. So it's very obvious that John believes in the quantum methodology, in that things are little bitty pieces. Matter is bitty pieces of other matter, right? I don't buy into that. I used to. I don't buy into that now. I see very clearly that it's very definitely something else. It is the non-physical that manifests into the physical. And where he's at, it's like, no, everything's already physical. And that's why quantum physics makes so much sense. And yet it doesn't make any sense because they're talking about things like the double slit experiment, that, when they fired those electrons through the slits, right? And all of a sudden it comes up with an interference pattern. Well, how is that working? Exactly, right? And the only way that they can even look at that paradigm is under the bean counting paradigm. They have to be able to put a number and count things happening so that they can put a mathematical equation to it. You cannot simply, they're incapable of understanding that there are clearly, the way that the physical is brought manifest is through the non-physical. And the biggest and best explanation that we have to prove that is magnetism and electricity. And even what they're calling gravity, even though it's the same damn thing, and it actually is in a different modality, it's understood very differently, and it's been corrupted in such a way so that the elite can put this gravity model as they have taught it to be able to make planets swinging around the suns and ISSs going around the Earth and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, you look at it, people, I think, only look at things very superficially. They don't really think very deeply about it necessarily. And so they miss a lot. And that's why, finding a way to communicate would be awesome. And honestly, that's something that I would really like to do at some point. And I'm not going to talk about this too much longer with like the guys over at Flat Earth Debates. I mean, I really respect a lot of what they do, but I think that sometimes the way they go about science is so patently absurd that I'm just left without words,
Right. I want to throw this in here real fast. Like, I think that what's happening is both sides kind of are so, I don't know if the word's passionate, but adamant about their stake. And a lot of people have said it out loud for a long time. And so it's a touchy thing. I think we should kind of look at it like a family reunion. And like, we haven't talked to the cousin over there in a little bit, but he's at the barbecue and he's still familiar, and make it easy for him to admit like, oh, dang, I shouldn't have stole from grandma or whatever it is, Like, that's the tricky part, I think, that we kind of get entrapped into. And I think you'd be surprised with QE specifically, right? Like what he actually thinks about all this. He's just very particular with what he says. And then sometimes it gets into metaphysical, more subjective interpretations of mechanisms. And he kind of taps out there. I've actually talked to him in depth about it. It's more so how like precise the experiments are. But he doesn't just die on the hill that their claim interpretations are correct. And so I think it's one of those nuances where people are kind of talking past each other. I just think overall people should kind of look at it like we don't have to agree with what we thought 5 years ago. We're learning, and we need to all just evolve, and we need to make it easy for other people to kind of walk back whatever they've said so that we can make more of an impact with it,
Yeah, I think honestly it's more Nathan Oakley and Anthony Riley that are, more guilty of that, because honestly, I'm fine with agreeing to disagree, but I mean, I have no words for people that when you disagree with them, like with what Jake Flat Earth Asshole did, or anybody that disagrees with anything that anybody did, like when they didn't like when DITRH, David Weiss, went on somebody's show and talking to allegedly Dave, or not allegedly Dave, but Professor Dave. And it's like, all of a sudden, they're shills, right? Only because they disagree and they don't like the way that other people handled it. And, because I have a different opinion and the way I see this is very different and yet not very different than the way they're purporting it to be. Instead of trying to work it out, which I've tried on multiple occasions, I get toe tagged. I get, accused of favoring child rape. And it's like this shit like that is just beyond the pale. But again, I'm not here to talk about that, but that's this kind of shit that we have got to get away from. Right. And if we can't even do it with our own community, we're in trouble, right? We're in trouble. And believe me,
maybe we should just kind of step. We don't even need the idea of like a community stamping our ideas, right? Let's go back to when we first found out about the Earth. I think is going to what's really benefit us, like, because think about what we were just talking about, the Fibonacci sequence, and what's the cause of it? Why does it happen? Why is the show designed? We're now talking about, in my opinion, the actual manifestation of the material world, matter, physicality that you can touch, how it comes into existence, and that is such a next level understanding. It's one of the big truths that they took out of the history books, if you will. And so I think we need to just expand into, just dive into not being scared to talk about them, learning and being wrong about things. Because for me, I want to know, is that spiral a cymatic pattern of energy dispersing in an etheric field that then manifests as matter? Can we utilize this understanding moving forward? Can we make self-sustainable houses for all the people that wake up and we can get energy out of the air? And we should just focus on the bigger things, right? I think the trick is actually us kind of, we felt like it was us against the world. And so we're like, let's gather the troops and let's get our script right. And now we're 5 years in, our debate's so solid. Now let's go get them. And I think that's kind of the trick. We should more so realize none of us know exactly how big the earth is or anything like that. And let's just kind of move towards the big things. If we can have important conversations with people like Ken Willer and other people, eventually the chips will fall where they should. You know, I think that we've gotten tripped into a little bit more of like I don't want to say cult, but like the idea we all have to agree. And I'm agreeing with what you're saying, right? Like people can just not agree. And if people can't agree to disagree, then whatever, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever. I don't want to be
totally. And that of course is another side to this whole Ken Wheeler issue, right? You know, I don't think I have to tell you that, you know, they have toe tagged so-called Ken Wheeler on multiple occasions. You know, I mean, my God, the hatred that they've thrown toward this guy and the insults and all this stuff, it's like, it's unbelievable. And I think largely it comes from the fact that so many people really relate to what he's saying. But, you know, I don't know what the reason is, but obviously by bringing Ken Wheeler into this, and if we don't do this correctly, it's also going to give people on our own side, you know, meaning flat earth, ammunition against somebody that could be a fantastic asset. So, you know, again, guys, this is an old subject, but we really need to try so much harder to get along and understand, you know, tolerance and things like that. And it's not easy. It really isn't. And that's why, you know, I really want to keep everything as friendly as possible. And I told David, I said, if Ken is not aware of where we're going with this, I will not do the show, period. I said, you and Jeran can do it, but I won't be a part of it because to me, I respect the guy enough to not ambush him, you know, and I would see it kind of as an ambush, you know. Yeah, we're interested in his work, but we're most interested in his work and how it can apply to what we're doing and what we're learning here and how we can reconvey our message, you know, using some of his logic, right? So that's it. So that's why we're going to do it that way. And wow, we went freaking 2 hours just trying to say that, but I think it's really important that we did do that. So there's a lot to this.
Yeah, when you say next level, I think that it's moving forward, doing things that progress forward instead of calling people out names that you don't agree with, especially when we're all on the same side. This is like petty gossip in a way. It
is, but it's also a real issue. And,
I know it's a real issue.
And we need to set the example and, you know, stop it, you know, because we're just as guilty, you know, as the people we're accusing. And that's, you know, I mean, yeah, maybe I'm a dreamer and I just want everybody to get along, and I realize people won't, but that's no reason to leave civility behind, you know. God, you know, whatever happened to diplomacy? That's one of the problems with the internet and keyboard warriors. You know, it's turned people into monsters. There's no more human interaction anymore, you know. To you know, to you or to most people on the internet, people, you know, living, breathing, you know, blood, heart, skin people are just characters on a screen. You know, they mean nothing. And so most people detach themselves from that. So anyway, we won't go.
Maybe that's why there's no duels anymore, Bob. Ever since the telephone came out, yeah, you could just call somebody and be like, "Hey, you're an asshole," and then hang up on them. You know,
yeah.
Where before that, you had to be standing in front of someone's face to call them an asshole. It's like, well, now we're going to shoot at each other.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
and technology has really made us horrible people.
It really has. Oh my God, that's a whole nother show we could go on. But
I really appreciate people's unique takes or unique beliefs on different subjects. That to me, I celebrate that, because if we all believe the same thing, then you would never learn anything new. So I like to hear other people, and I don't ever want to discourage them from continuing on that line of research. But if people call on me to say, what is your belief right now? I also have no problem in telling people what my current belief is. But what we need to get away from is the demonizing of people thinking outside the box or thinking differently than us. We all think differently this year than we did a year ago, which we think different than we did a year before that, and think of how vastly different we believe today than we did 10 years ago. So to take what somebody else says and just shit on it, which I see a lot in this community, is a little bit distressing, because it's like, they're not where you're at yet. Why don't you just present what you believe and why you believe it, and then allow the person to take it in. If it matches their worldview, then they'll probably start adopting some of those things. And if it doesn't, then they will put it away for a later time, and maybe that will come up down the road and they'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that guy talking about that. But it really should be that easy, and we should celebrate being open-minded. And instead, we went from one dogmatic position and we jumped over and said, okay, now I'm open-minded, and then we got squeezed into another dogmatic position. And to me, that the more that happens, the more I'll push away, because it's the one way that you stop learning. It's the one way that you give up. You no longer are in charge of your own beliefs, and that's what science has become. Nobody who believes in science has anything other than the exact same beliefs. They're actually useless. They're just, you won't need to talk to them anymore, because they basically are just believing what's in a physics book. I'd rather talk to somebody that I don't know what they believe. I'd have to ask them. I'd have to have a conversation with them. Why do you believe that? What have you seen that led you to that? And then celebrate that ability to be able to speak open-mindedly and with their real opinions. And we're getting to the point now, especially with social media, where if you state your own opinions, you get vilified and destroyed. And if you conform to the status quo, to the mainstream propagandist piece or their narrative, then you get celebrated. Well, that's just creating a world of basically drones, of slaves. And you can tell that's the direction we're going. I mean, even since 1980, since 1990, that's where they're headed, to where you will not be accepted in society for your free thought. That you will be shunned for it. And this is why schools don't really do a good job of outputting somebody who becomes famous and goes off and does something spectacular. No, schools do the opposite. They create complacent little parrots. So anyway, I think that we should just celebrate that more and be open to people's different ideas. And just because they have a different opinion than us, it doesn't mean we need to attack them, or we need to force people to choose sides. We don't. We shouldn't. We should just say, yeah, I know those guys say this. Here's what we say and why we say it. And but the choice is up to you, and leave it at that. We don't need to attack. Everything's an attack. This person's a shill. This person's a liar. This person's an agent. It's nonsense. And trust me, it's driven so many people away from this community, and it will continue to do so.
I agree. I would say maybe this will resonate like this to all the quote unquote flat earthers, which I think that term was actually used to result in what you're describing right now. I literally think the term was like conspiracy theorist was made. But anyway, for all the quote unquote flat earthers, I want you to really think and admit, we don't know what the earth is. You think about major things. You don't know major parts of what the earth is or how it works. Okay. So if you're trying to figure out about the earth and what we've been lied to about and what's been hidden, continuing from this point forward with your maximum capacity of current knowledge, you're going to have to add new things to it to learn further parts of the truth about the earth. There's not one quote unquote flat earther that knows it all. So everyone should just kind of always understand that should be unspoken. That
wait, you forgot about RV though. RV knows it all. RV.
Rare.
Other than him. Oh, sorry, gotcha. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, because it's like the overall principle, right? It's very constant. It's like the very subject that we're in when we say community and what we're alluding to and what we think, the very group of people that we are even absorbing the title of. The truth is we're just all flat earthers, so it's really a stupid term, but like everyone in the world. But anyway, it's like we're trying to figure it out. Our whole thing is that we don't know. We just know what isn't true. That's our whole thing. And we're figuring out more about what is true. So automatically there's no one that has the perfect flat earth script of dogma written out, because it's impossible. It's intrinsically contradictory. You're a flat earther because you're trying to figure it out. So I don't know. I think dogma would just be the death of that pursuit, right? And that seems wild to me that would elude the grasp of someone.
And I don't think everything can be known. When we look up in the sky, I don't think NASA knows what's going on up there with all their, the stuff they do know behind the scenes that they don't tell us. I don't think they have a clue.
Well, they don't tell each other either.
Than we do.
But that's great.
Yeah,
they're compartmentalized.
There's things here
to hell.
we're not gonna know.
I think that's the biggest part, Zach. Maybe we just solved all the problems right here. Okay, some people are much more content with just saying I don't know about a lot of it, and some of us acknowledge that we won't know everything, but we want to keep going and seeing exactly how far away that is. Some people are just content knowing they lied. Let's get the truth out. We know this is a more accurate description of the earth. It doesn't move. It's stationary. It's a plane. It's contained. And that's it. And that's enough for them. I have no beef with those people, right? They should just have no beef with the people that want to keep going and see how much more they can figure out, right? I think that's the disconnect, is what you're describing, that some people just know we're not going to know exactly what the moon is, right? And some of us are over here still trying to figure out better ways to understand the moon. So it's to each their own. We're all still a family. We still all agree that they lied. We need to come together and expose their lies, wake other people up, prevent the future generations of children from being brainwashed like we were. And that's the ultimate goal. And however we choose our own path within it, it's just live and let be.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely, Austin.
Beautiful.
We need to live out the world that we're trying to create. Because that's really the only way you can do it, is to not by talking about it or anything like that. Well, talking about it, yes, but doing it. And that's one of the biggest things. So anyway, all right. So let's move on then. And so when we get in touch with Ken, I would like people that if you have any specific question that you would like me to ask Ken, to either put it in the comments or email me or whatever. All that information is in the show notes. And, if I think it's a good question and valid and everything, I'll certainly ask it of him or answer it myself, one of the two. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to get some input on what people would like to understand from him, because if you don't understand what he's about, he can be a little overwhelming, right? I mean, the guy's got so much going on inside of his head. It's bizarre. It really is. But, when you sit here and you watch what he does and his level of understanding of things that it's obvious they don't want people to know about, this is one of those people that we really need to tap in on them. So send me an email, put it in the comments, anything like that. I'll be happy to ask. And, Jeran and Dave will be there also. And, we'll go from there. So, all right. Where am I going with this? So, all right. So I have this video for a lot of you that are not aware of what he's about. This is a really old video of his. And in fact, it is... Let's just go back to June 14th, 2015, right? So he's been around as long as we have, pretty much. And, because I found him a long time, it was right around the same time that I got into Flat Earth. And so I started watching his stuff, and this particular video is so cool because he goes through it and he talks about what we're conceiving as gravity, as magnetism and electricity and dielectricity are all the same thing. And really, they're all that matters. Whereas, in mainstream science, you've got the weak nuclear force and the strong nuclear force and the subatomic levels of nonsense that they the bean counters put in there, right? And he just breaks this down and says, no, it's just a different modality of the very same thing. And he constantly says that Mother Nature is very simple. And indeed she is. Indeed she is. It's all based on pressure mediation. You may not understand that, but hopefully by the time we're done with everybody and they understand this, they will understand that it really is all about pressure mediation. And that's why I say that without this downward bias, right, that's what sets everything into motion, right? It's like the juggernaut. And without that, nothing works. In other words, you cannot be in a state of perfect equilibrium. Granted, things are always going to try and return to that, but if they do, then everything stops, right? And we're talking about if this stopped, if that downward pressure stopped, our reality would cease to exist. And I mean, it is that fundamental. It's much more than just a gravitational conversation that we're talking about here. So, if it's okay with you guys, I'm going to play a little bit of this and just listen to him. So if you're not familiar with him, you can hear him speak and, you know, how he explains some of this stuff. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yeah.
All right. God, I got to get something to drink. Whew. Yeah, cotton mouth, big time. All right, let's go.
Potential, i.e. the...
Can you hear that?
Yep.
All right, cool. All right, so let's let him open with this and we'll go forward.
Hello, I'd like to make a simple video on field theory that hopefully even in...
By the way, guys, if you want to comment, just start talking and I will pause it immediately, okay?
Okie doke.
Okie doke, thanks.
12-year-old child could understand. Now, instead of looking this as a circle, just think it as an infinite point of without spatial volume. And if we look at it this way, we're more easily able to understand it. We think of this as an indivisible line that actually has no extension. We're talking about unmanifest inertia, or what quantum mechanics and general relativity and their insanity have called dark matter or quantum fluid, which is just nothing other than a euphemism for what Tesla, Heaviside, Steinmetz, Faraday, and all the greats of electrical theory that gave us 100% of our current electrical grid and system. Einstein gave us nothing of that. Nothing. Okay? He invented nothing, he discovered nothing, and his quote-unquote...
Well, no, that's not true. Einstein does have a patent on a blouse. So
it's a lovely blouse.
It's a lovely blouse. It is, yes. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. He has nothing else to his credit. You know, he's mostly known for E equals MC squared, which was actually stolen from another physicist, point blank, and his theories of relativity, which also, by the way, were stolen from other physicists, and then incredibly distorted to something that has no relation to reality, right? It's stupid storytelling is what relativity theory is, right? Frames of reference. Oh my God, the way that they dilute and corrupt technical explanations with reference frames and stuff like that, and all this goes back to relativity, has set physics back 100 years easily. So yeah, I mean, the guy, people should despise Einstein.
Really, I mean, every decade we should have advanced as much as we have now since 1915. By 1925, I mean, Martin Liedtke has shown some of those world fairs. They had Skype in the 1920s. You could see the person talking to you on the screen. So I mean,
that's
yeah,
crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, imagine how far we could be right now.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know if that footage is real or not, but whatever. I tend to believe that a lot of it probably is, because, you know, when you see the way the world is, and it doesn't make sense that reality would be where it is today, or society would be where it is today, running under this paradigm that we operate under today. And it all seems to be that this started taking place right around the turn of the 20th century, around 1900. And from that point forward, oh shit, right? Okay, let's continue on.
Quote, theory of relativity is mostly stolen from Henri Poincaré. Excuse me, my French is not so great. Henri Poincaré. I'm sure I'm still pronouncing that wrong. Anyway, as far as field theory, we only have two field modalities, and we have one field. There is only one field. Now we think in terms of electrostatics, like dielectricity. We think in terms of magnetic field, electrical, and then we think of gravitational field. But ultimately, I hope to make this really fast and simple for you to understand it, that there's only one field, and there's the loss of that field as expressed by magnetism, i.e. the loss of inertia, because there's only two principles that rule the entire universe. force in motion, and inertia and acceleration. Well, how do you tie all four of them together rationally? Now, actually, let me show you this. Now, as you've seen underneath the ferrocell, a magnet, doesn't matter what shape it is, looks exactly like this. It looks like a torus. It looks like a well, of course, most people can't visualize that. I can. A reciprocating processional hyperboloid, which sounds complicated, but is divinely simplex. Now, you see this spirograph-like hypertrochoidal pattern. If you're able to get it underneath the camera better, I'll show it to you in a slightly uncompressed fashion. There you go. You actually see a torus, a toroid, a spirograph, a hypertrochoid. That's the expression of the loss of inertia. Now, as Faraday called magnetism, he called it the dielectric field. But what does that mean specifically? It means that the necessitated loss of inertia, i.e. the ether, must be expressed as the creation of space, and of course the posterior attribute of the creation of space is a measure of movements of magnitude, which we call time, but of course time does not exist. Time is a human contrivance. Here we have dielectricity with absolutely no manifestation as a linear propagation. Now, we think of a single point, i.e. the ether, as being unmanifest. A longitudinal propagation, such as found in electromagnetism, i.e. radio or regular light, obviously has a longitudinal pulse between each waveform of the electrical value and the magnetic value of the waveform of the transverse electromagnetism. Now here we have electricity, which, by the way, is phi times psi q in Planck electrification. Electricity is nothing other than the hybrid of electricity and magnetism operating together, which is found in, obviously, frequency and amplitude, constantly pulsing back and forth like this. Well, what frequency? What amplitude? Obviously, we have the entire EM spectrum and we have electricity. So electricity is a hybrid of dielectricity and of magnetism, operating at a frequency and an amplitude, obviously so. Now, in the case of
Am I the only one?
Pause it? Yeah, no. Did you pause it,
Oh,
Pablo?
crap. I'm sorry. I'm sitting there talking. My bad. All right. Let me say that again. So, God, I hate it when I do that. What a dumbass. What he's saying is that it is the electricity spectrum goes through RF, the electromagnetism spectrum, and electricity itself. Well, electricity itself is what we would call DC, direct current. In other words, electricity is polarized. It has a polarity to it. So you're taking it from an analog state, I guess. Well, that's not a good description. You're taking it from a static state, okay, of being one single polarity to when you start reversing those polarities in the sinusoidal fashion, then you're starting to introduce a wavelength or a frequency to things. So if I was to, whistle a sine wave, it would go up in pitch and down in pitch and up in pitch and down in pitch and up in pitch and down in pitch, right? And all we're doing is we're taking that electricity or that polarity and changing the pitch of it, right? So basically what that means is you're going from DC to all the way through the electromagnetic spectrum, which, you could call audio like 0 hertz to 60 hertz. 60 hertz is power frequency, all that. All of it is still frequency, and anything can be oscillated at virtually any frequency. But as far as we know, everything in existence either exists in an oscillating type of state like this, like RF or electromagnetic energy, or it exists in a DC or electrostatic type of state, right? And out of this manifests reality and creation. And that's basically what he's trying to say here. But he uses a lot of really technical terms. But let's continue on unless anybody has anything else. Okay.
No, I just say that's a smart 12-year-old.
That's what? A smart 12-year-old?
Yeah, he says at the beginning of the video he'd like to make it so a 12-year-old could understand this. Those are some smart 12-year-olds.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Well, that is one thing Einstein supposedly said that, I agree with. If you really understand something well enough, you should be able to explain it in simple enough terms that a child could understand it.
But I was just telling Chris this. I can see a lot of kind of what I am trying to work on that he does sometimes. It's like sometimes you forget when you understand something, you just start you just start saying it as if they do. You don't realize that you're running through like crucial parts real fast because you're just trying to make this other point. And I see him do that, where he just kind of like these terms, and you're like, "What are you talking about?" It's I can relate.
Oh,
I know.
totally.
I do that now with electricity as well too. I'll be saying stuff and they're like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa!" It's like, sorry.
Yeah.
You just forget. You forget.
Yeah.
It's like so common knowledge to you now. You don't even think about it as other people have never even heard some of these words.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny because a long time ago I took something called the EST training. I don't know if you've ever heard of EST, but it's basically about life and interactions and stuff like that. It stood for Earhart Seminars Training, Werner Earhart, all that stuff. So anyway, one of the things that they said in that class that really hit home with me is that when you're communicating with somebody, not only do you have to take responsibility for how you are communicating to them, but you also have to take responsibility for how they're hearing it, right? So you have to be cognizant enough by their reaction and their interaction in replying to you that to be able to see what it is they're not understanding and what it is they're not seeing, right? Because a lot of us do that, and when we don't do that, when we don't take responsibility for how our message is being heard, then all that does is open up a door of ambiguity, right? And misunderstanding. And so that's something that people really need to kind of, keep in mind, is that when you're actually communicating with somebody, if you're truly communicating with them, you are looking at them, you're looking at them in the eyes, you're looking at their body. You can tell if they are understanding you. You can tell if they're even hearing you, right? And a lot of people are
I'm bad
distracted.
about this, Bob. I'm bad. I'm a very visual thinker. So a lot of times when people are speaking to me, I won't make eye contact if I'm really thinking hard about what they're saying. If I'm trying to visually it must drive Cami crazy because I always seen her like leaning down to like make eye contact. It's like, hold on, I'm thinking. My eyes just start wandering off. Yeah, and I'm really, really bad about it with everything. Whenever with pleasantries and stuff, of course, I make eye contact. But when I'm really trying to get a concept into my brain, I'm horrible about, interacting with people.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
You're not alone. But it's just another one of those life lessons. And I think as you get older and wiser, and some people pick it up earlier than others, you pick up on little tricks like that. Understanding that, yeah, oh, wow, that makes sense that I need to make sure that you actually understand what I'm saying instead of saying, well, didn't you hear me? I told you that, right? And because sometimes you have to change the verbiage a little bit, and then that will clarify the message, and life is good, right? So, and that's, what I want to do with Ken Wheeler. And, this video and what he says in it can sound extremely technical, but really I've seen this thing a dozen times, and every time I listen to it, it just makes perfect sense in every area. And I want that for everybody to be able to understand that, because then we can make a lot more progress, right? So
Does he give the analogy with Mother Nature in this one?
I believe yes, he does.
Okay, great. I use it all the time. It's one of my favorites, and it made me comprehend things a lot better just thinking of it that way.
About
it really
chicks
did.
with hairy underarms, or what?
Yep. Dreadlocks, flowers in her hair, bells on her ankles, no shoes.
Yep.
Just trying to make everything get along.
There you go.
Yep.
All right, let's continue.
Really simple so that a child could understand, like electromagnet that pulls up cars. obviously an enormous amount of voltage is actually dropped to the lifter, like the lifter magnet that picks up dead cars and re-scraps out things. Now, electricity doesn't terminate as magnetism, or doesn't terminate into magnetism by dumping that charge and creating a large electromagnet. It loses its dielectric component. So electricity terminates not into magnetism as wrongly thought, but as magnetism by losing its dielectric component. In other words, all that electricity that is actually brought through electromagnet to lift up dead cars so they could be scrapped is nothing other than the loss of the dielectric component of electricity, which means you have an extremely high Gauss field that is able to pick up multi-ton cars with that electromagnet. It is that electricity terminates as magnetism by losing its dielectric component, not into magnetism, but as magnetism, because electricity is the hybrid of dielectricity and magnetism. Phi times psi equals Q, Planck, and electrification. Electricity, by definition, denotatively, is the combination of two things, dielectricity and magnetism. So by losing its dielectric component, the electricity manifests itself in the electromagnet, for example, as a huge, enormous, very powerful high Gauss magnetic field. Now, where does gravity come into play? Well, we think gravity is something different. Now, we know in galactic jets we see enormous amounts of shooting matter shooting out billions of light years at either end of galactic jets. Now, the necessary loss of inertia, which manifests itself as longitudinal dielectricity, is an equation. It's 1 over phi to the power of -3, which some people would think would be a number, but it's actually an expression. And that expression, if we were to think of this as a 0 point, which is invisible rather than seeing the circle, that equation necessitates the expression, which we know that the attributional nature of the ether expresses itself as longitudinal dielectricity by that equation that I discovered 12 years ago. So where does gravity come into play? Gravity, like electricity, is nothing other than a hybrid. So what is gravity? Well, we talk about what denotes gravity. We're talking about mass, i.e. matter. Matter is nothing more than a dielectric condensate. Okay, it's like taking carbon dioxide and freezing it to its solid state. Now, obviously, that is a huge hyperbole, and that's a supreme oversimplification, but this is matter. Okay, obviously, extremely simplex. Let's just think of this as the hydrogen atom. Even that is too simple, obviously, this model, of course. But we have, as of course modern science likes to say, well, 99.99999% of an atom is empty space. That's not true. This supposed empty space in here, and an atom is magnetodielectricity, and what we think are electron atoms. Now, by the way, Tesla, Heaviside, Steinmetz, Faraday, on, even the discoverer, J.J. Thomson of the quote-unquote electron, denied for a long time that the electron is a particle. There's absolutely no such thing as an electron particle. And email me if you want a huge list of logical reasoning behind this. But the premise that we have that wires are like huge rain sticks that little electron atoms are pouring through. Oliver Heaviside called this, I think he called it a mind virus. Eric Dollard called it the same thing. Tesla, on 2 different occasions, said that the notion that the electron was a particle was absolutely absurd. So everybody that gave you 100% of our current electrical grid, these people weren't stupid, by the way.
Yeah, one thing I want to say about the electron being a particle is the way I'm seeing it, and this is something I definitely want to talk with Ken about, is that the electron, instead of being a little bitty teeny tiny bit of matter, of stuff, right? What it actually is a standing wave. And what does that mean exactly? Well, a standing wave is kind of like, think about like 2 magnets together, right? And if you put 2 like poles together, you feel this repulsion, right? You feel there's something there, and if the magnetic strength is high enough, there's no way you're ever going to push those 2 together, right? In other words, it feels like there's something physical there, but it isn't. It's the waveform essentially coming from the propagation of the matter through the magnet itself, right? So electromagnetic waves can be combined to become more and more powerful or coherent, and they can have a lot of energy into them, right? So that basically this non-physical thing can pack a punch like it's like a wrecking ball, quite literally. And yet it's non-physical. So I think that's where these guys came from when they invented electrons and little bitty pieces of matter, that they are actually there when they're not. They're just bits of energy that are interacting with each other. And because they all have charge potential, think of it as holding, a bunch of little magnets. Of course, the little magnets, they would all stick together. But what if it was opposite from that and they all repulsed each other? It would be really hard to hold in one hand, right? But that's basically what's going on. So that's an interpretation, I think, of what matter is energy in a, I don't know if I would call it a discordant form or a non-resonant form, but in a form that is just opposite of whatever it's coming up against. And that probably didn't come out very good at all. I'll think that through and redo it for you. But let's continue.
But everything now is based upon Greek atomism. That's all general relativity and quantum mechanics is nothing other than atomism. If you don't know what atomism is, then I suggest you look it up. It basically means that the whole universe is just a giant bag of magical, unseen particles rolling around like BBs and volleyballs, they're bumping into each other. And of course, they've never defined a field. Never. They never will define a field because fields are particle free. They'll never define instantaneous action at a distance, such as EPR. Look up EPR paradox. But we know that it exists. See, faster than light travel, instantaneous action at a distance contradicts the entire premise of general relativity and quantum mechanics, and so does the denotation of the term field, which has never been explained, never been defined. Human understanding is still in the Stone Ages. We think are so advanced with our computers and our TV sets, but ultimately we're pretty stupid. So ultimately, let's look again. Remember back to the ferro cell. Like I said, you see this again? This toroidal form that you see underneath the ferro cell? That's magnetism as painted by light. Tim Vanderelli's wonderful invention. So you could think of this as a 0-point ether pressure that has been released, longitudinal. The expression of that form in transverse reciprocating precessional hyperboloid is magnetism. We have ultimately only one field, dielectricity. We have the loss of that field's potential, just like releasing charge on a battery, for example. And the release of that field, i.e. inertia, i.e. dielectricity, is force in motion. Okay? 100% of the visible universe is magnetism. Okay, the entire atomic structure of an atom in picometers, as it measured in picometers, is due to magnetism, not dielectricity. So we have one field, one release of that field's potential, i.e. the loss of that inertia, as expressed in force and motion, and we have two field modalities, one being electricity, okay, frequency and amplitude, and the other one being gravity, which is a dielectric condensate. We have a nucleus, okay? Right here we have tons of magnetodielectric space created. Okay, space is not a thing. Space is neither a field nor a force.
And now, just by the way, guys, I disagree with what he's saying here about, how he's defining gravity, and yet in other places he's quite lucid about it. But I think he's trying to relate this to the idea of mass attracting mass. And while that is theoretically possible, right? Because remember, if you guys saw Zack's video where he took a bunch of magnets, right? And when he put them end to end, making a coherent magnetic field, positive to negative, north to south, north to south, north to south, north to south, the magnetic field that resulted from doing that was very high. It had a very high Tesla rating, a very high Gauss count. But when you took those very same magnetic BBs and clustered them all up together, then the magnetic field in them went down to almost nothing. But the interesting thing that happened to those BBs when he did that is that it didn't matter what pole of a magnet you stuck onto that, it didn't repel. It always attracted, right? So again, the relationship is, well, okay, so if you have charged particles, then theoretically those charged particles could technically, be thought of to do the same thing. But that's, again, there's other reasons for why this would happen. So I totally disagree with what he's saying about this here, but it just goes back to the coherency of this energy, right? Whether it's incoherent or coherent makes a huge difference into how this energy manifests. Okay? And hopefully I didn't confuse you too much on that, but let's continue.
Space acts on nothing, space does nothing. This is the ultimate brain virus and huge flaw that Tesla says over and over again, as well as others, of general relativity, is reified space as something that does something. It's like saying a shadow has done something, or a shadow is the absence of something. Okay, the absence of inertia. Let's just consider the central point here, which is not a point, it's even prior to a point. That the loss of that inertia is expressed in force and motion, leaves behind it a wake that us humans and our stupidity, all of us, call space. Okay, we live in it, we breathe in it because we're all existential beings, but that space is neither a field nor a force. It does nothing, it acts on nothing. So here we have a dielectric condensate we call mass or matter, in its most simplex form, obviously. An oversimplification, to be sure, with this model, which is a toroflux, by the way. This cute little toy is called a toroflux. It's a neat little device that every little child should have that gets them thinking in multidimensional geometric fashions. So, that's the irreducible simplicity of the universe. I have to stick fast to this and say that it's absolutely irrefutable. As far as a grand unified theory, I mean, it's already been discovered. Whether anybody accepts it or not, it doesn't make any difference to me. I'm just happy to understand it. But we only have one field, that's dielectricity, i.e. the ether, expressed longitudinally. That's the longitudinal pulse found within transverse electromagnetism. We have the loss of that inertia, the loss of that acceleration as expressed by force and motion.
Right. Now, what's interesting about this, guys, is, of course, this is both the centrifugal and centripetal forces in one package, right? You have the hyperboloid down in the center, and you have the spherical construct to the outside, right? And where everything manifests is right here at the center point. This is where the term 0 point energy comes from. It comes from literally the nothingness, or not a physical realm, to where we are now. It's coming from like somewhere else. And this formation is constantly renewing itself through that 0 point, right? And it's just really fascinating to think about how this works. So I just wanted to point that out, but this is the most fundamental form that you'll ever see in the universe. The toroid and the hyperboloid, because they're literally inverse from each other. And of course, around here, if you took and you put a little dinner plate right around there on the inside, you would have what is called the dielectric inertial plane. When you relate that to Earth, that's where we live, guys. That's where we live. And here where this hyperboloid is, or hyperborea, right, is where the North Pole is. This thing that supposedly we've seen this big hole in the center of the Earth that kind of goes down into this black thing. Whether or not it's real, I don't know. But theoretically, it would stand to reason that it would be there. And if it was going to manifest like that, we would probably see it as something very much like that. Coming from this point right here, the point of 0 point stillness, where the Creator speaks from, right? It just makes sense, all of it.
Now, as I told you in prior videos, there's a huge difference, especially in field theory, between acceleration and motion. Increasing acceleration in terms of gravity, for example, which is an acceleration towards dielectric voidance, Okay? Gravity is nothing other than dielectricity. Gravity is no different than turning on your TV set and actually shining a light off from the side and you seeing the little dust particles actually head to the TV set and stick to the TV set. That's why you're running your TV set, especially the little CRT tubes, got so dusty. The dust in the air would go gravitate.
Right. And he's totally right about this, because this is the electrostatic model of gravity, right? The electrostatic acceleration, incoherent, right? That Zack and I talk about all the time. And Zack's videos, if you guys haven't seen his videos on this, they're fantastic. And I think even Ken Wheeler commented on him very favorably. So we definitely have some common ground here, to work with him on. And I think that once he sees how we're applying this to what not only the Bible is telling us about this construct, but how other cosmologies and other civilizations around the world, how they've described it, that it makes perfect sense. It really does. So let's go ahead and finish this out.
To the front of the... That is the exact same thing as gravity. People think that that is an electrostatic charge, or like you charge a balloon up and you pull someone's hair to it. That same acceleration, not force, that same acceleration is what we ignorantly call gravity. Gravity itself is an autonomous acceleration, of which a lot of people call it incorrectly a force, does not exist. It's like, what do you mean gravity doesn't exist? Obviously I can drop this and there's gravity. And what I mean specifically is that gravity does not exist. It is not an autonomous force. It's definitely not a force, which of course even the idiots of general relativity and quantum mechanics will admit to. They call it an acceleration, but an acceleration of what? By what?
Now see, the problem with that, and this is another word, I guess it's in the semantics of this, but one of the primary rules of physics is that in order to have an acceleration in anything, whether you're going around in circles or you're turning right in your car or putting on your brakes, which would be technically a deceleration, even though it's still an acceleration, or anything like that, oh God, man, I forgot what I was going to say. God damn it. What was I going to say, Zack?
F equals mass times acceleration.
No.
In order
it not be a force.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Thank you. That's right.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
That's
I
right.
was quiet a long time ago, so.
Oh, that's right, Hero. Hey, man.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Yep. So that's what I was trying to say, is that it's an axiomatic law of physics that where there is an acceleration, there must be a force causing it. Well, if there's no force here, then what do they call this, right? I would have to call it a force, but then that's defining gravity as a force. And then you're getting into terminology and semantics that some people don't like. But I'm just saying that, in every other application that we've ever seen to get things to change direction or create a state of acceleration, whether overcoming inertia from zero or slowing it down to zero, all of these are changes in acceleration, and they all require a force. So if you're not going to call it a force, then what the hell is it that's doing it? And why wouldn't it be called a force? Does that make any sense to you, Austin, at all? Put you on the spot.
maybe say it again.
Oh, I was just saying, does that make sense to you that, they're saying that it's definitely not a force, right? And yet every definition of a force every definition of an acceleration is that it must be caused by a force. And if it's not caused by a force, then what's causing it? And why isn't it called a force? That's one of those questions that I definitely have for Ken.
Yeah. I would say, electrostatics is a force, so I don't see how any acceleration in any direction wouldn't include a force.
Yeah, and yet he's saying the exact same thing here, and to me that just doesn't register.
I think what describes what you're saying the best, and I think you've got this one right, Bob, is that diagram that you have that shows the arrows going, and as it will flow with that direction and along the lines of force in the direction where you're showing the flow of electricity Zach, do you know which one I'm talking about? Where you have the different levels, the arrows going in the line and flowing. It's definitely.
Are you
force.
talking
They're sitting
about
here saying
through the toroid and the hyperboloid?
No, I'm talking about through the electric field, where you're showing about the electric field itself, the way that it
how it
propagates.
goes around objects.
Right, in a certain direction,
if
and
the
it
object
goes
is
with the line of
grounded,
force.
yeah.
I have the
Yeah.
perfect visual that I'm describing badly, so I shouldn't have got in there. I was hoping I could click with that video and you could say, here's a definition of it. We see in the chat that somebody says a bias is not a force except for, in this case, again, it is a bias, but it also accelerates with the bias. And only along that axis, it's got a definite vector to it. So I would say you would have to call it a force.
Yeah. Nora says force is the causal aspect of the acceleration. I agree with that.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean,
I think it's also the causal aspect of the material's composition as well. Like that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's like layered to me. I mean, so then because like density. Well, density is the matter itself. The compactness of the matter is also a byproduct of the force built within that matter, because it's electrostatic, which is just objectively a force. I mean, so it basically is this giant pressure mediation equation, and then whatever the direction is based on whatever is the I don't know the actual word for it, but the more force left,
90,
right?
Yeah, 90 degrees perpendicular to the inertial plane, and it runs exactly that electrical field, the volts per meter down. Yeah.
Right. It's just a bunch of forces. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I definitely can't just take force out of it. I know that it triggers flat earthers to hear force a lot, but I'm not sure if I'm getting our disconnect. I think that there's an overall bias, which is a force, and then the matter itself is actually the composition of matter, the compactness of the matter is also relative to the force within.
Yeah, I agree. So anyway, that's definitely a question I'm going to be asking him for sure. But yeah, I just thought of something really interesting. Star Wars, how when it's either Yoda or Obi-Wan is describing what the Force is, I think, to Luke, and he says it's all around us. Life creates it. It's all around us. It binds you, me, the tree, the speeder, all this stuff, right? And it just occurred to me, it's like, that is a satanic 100% reversal of reality. It's like, no, it doesn't, life doesn't create it. It creates life, right? It's the other way around.
Well, they may be even like kind of tied, where it's a bit of a catch-22 there, because like, well, did the life exist prior to the material inhabitants? And I would argue yes. Like Tesla would call it the prana, right? But I would say, yeah, that's a false binary in my opinion.
Yeah, you're right. And thinking about that, you're absolutely right. I agree. It just seemed backwards. All right.
Yeah, that's leading to not say it correctly, though.
Oh yeah, for sure. And if words have meaning, then you kind of have to take that all in consideration. But and it is amazing how much stuff they do tell us in movies and theater and stuff. Last night I watched that movie again. God damn it, I always forget the name of it.
Man, it was last night, Bob. Come on.
I know, it's last night. I always forget the name of it.
You can remember.
It's the one with Matthew McConaughey where he goes across and all the way out to Saturn Station and...
Interstellar. No.
I'm sorry, which one?
Interstellar.
It's the one where the chick says, we're NASA. That movie.
Yeah.
If you don't have it yet, I thought you were joking. I thought you were joking that you don't remember the name, because this is funny. When you hear the name, you're going to laugh. What is this? What are we discussing? Is the electrostatic acceleration? What do you call that? What are we referring it to? Big G?
Gravity?
Your movie, Bobby. That's the name of the movie.
Oh,
Bob, we were watching Gravity last night.
You guys are just in...
I
that wasn't Gravity. That wasn't
Yes,
called
it
Gravity.
was. Yes, it was with
No, it
Matthew
wasn't.
McConaughey.
No, it wasn't.
And yes, it was.
Oh, come on, Jeran, you know the name of it. Interstellar.
Interstellar.
That's the name of the movie.
Yeah,
What
it
is it?
God, I won one with my wife for once.
I haven't seen it.
Are you sure that wasn't Gravity with Anne Hathaway and that in it and Matthew McConaughey?
No, that
I'm
was
gonna look it up.
Interstellar. That was Interstellar.
Gravity is-
Absolutely.
And Gravity was
is
a
Sandra
whole.
Bullock.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So,
but with the sand going, everything was gravity in the movie. Everything, gravity was the one
yeah,
thing.
it was all
like,
about, it's how they
it could move
communicated.
backwards in time.
They communicated
Different characters.
interdimensionally using supposedly gravity to send the Morse code, right? And I was just looking at that going, and all of it was created out of Einstein's horseshit relativity, right? Even though it was a cool movie, it really was. But man, what a load of BS. All right, let's finish this out.
And you are right. You did win one with wife. You do win them sometimes. I'm gonna give I'm gonna give you that one, honey. You got it.
Yay. Okay, let's switch into you.
We need explanations, not descriptions, and all that general relativity and quantum mechanics provides are descriptions, not explanations. It is a dielectric acceleration. It's dielectric avoidance. Okay, it is the loss of force in motion, because there are no straight lines in the universe. What we think are straight lines in the universe are infinitely slightly curved. There's not a single straight line anywhere in the universe. None, nowhere, ever.
I find that hard to believe also. Because it just doesn't sound right to me. Did anybody put any context to that? Why is there no such thing as a straight line in the universe? Why is that so impossible?
Well,
Go ahead. Go ahead, Austin.
I was going to say, like, the idea is you're basically invoking something infinite, and there would always be like a dispersal away from like a perfectly infinite anything. I don't know. I don't know why he would say that. I mean, if he's saying it, I don't know. Unless everything oscillates, I don't understand what he would be saying unless it's that everything oscillates or that you can't invoke infinite without it, like, basically looping back around to connect.
Maybe
not,
it's like
not
the
everything oscillates,
computer, the digital analogy.
I'm going to call
once you look at things at such a small scale, everything looks like squares making the circular line.
Wait,
so maybe that straight line is a bunch of small things making a straight line that we see, but it's not. I don't know.
This is a good question that would be a fun one to ask him and put on the thing, because I obviously have a lot of confusion in it with the gemological and the background I have. Watching crystals grow in perfectly straight lines in sacred geometry, I see nature creates in straight lines all of the time, perfectly straight ones. But what I do see in another way of looking at it, I think if he would word the sentence that it doesn't draw in a straight line like you put your pencil on a point and you draw from one end to the other. Nature never works that way. What it does work, it would be more like putting two pencils in the middle and drawing your line out and your lines out from the center, as opposed to a start and end point there. It draws from the center out. So it's just a different, to say it doesn't do a straight line, it doesn't do a linear line with a start and an end, but you can still wind up with that line.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what he's saying.
Yeah, seems kind of like a semantics argument to me, but whatever. All right, let's finish the last 45 seconds here.
Never. It doesn't exist. So, hope I made that very simple. We have one field. We have the loss of that field expressed as force and motion, and we have two field modalities. One expressed as a dielectric condensate, which we call matter, mass, okay? And the other one, which is expressed by longitudinal transverse force and motion, transverse electromagnetism expressed in frequency and amplitude, what we call electricity. So dielectricity, electrostatics, electricity, magnetism, and quote-unquote gravity are one thing only. It's our only pathetic human understanding of the nature of the universe that we think these are four separate things. Really, they're just one thing. They're a hydra, a single beast with four heads, if you want to talk about it that way. Thanks for watching.
Yep, there you go. So there's Ken Wheeler, and I think it's going to be an interesting discussion tomorrow, and I really hope to learn a lot. And wow, we spent a lot of time on that. There is one other thing I do want to cover, and we'll do it expediently, but it's something that David Weiss threw in the chat. Of course, right before showtime, he has a good feel for doing stuff like that. And it is this. You guys are well aware that Kelsey, whatever that guy is, this pilot, who is supposedly a 747 captain, even though I don't see captain stripes on his lapel. That tells me he's a co-pilot and not the captain, but I don't know, whatever. And he is basically now taunting us, through our responses. And Jeran, did you see this yet?
Yeah, I was about halfway through it, but I got the gist.
Yeah, did you see the part where he actually played the part that you were in it?
Yep. That's the beginning. Yeah, and he gets it wrong too, but it's fine.
Okay, so I kind of want to play this a little bit and talk about it, and then we'll kill the stream after that. And we may run a little bit over, guys. Sorry about that, but it's my bad. I got carried away talking about the other thing. But let's give this a roll and see what he's saying here. And oh my God, you know what's amazing is before we even get started, you'll notice that he is basically double dog daring us to do this, right? And then he makes the disclaimer, well, but we may not make those actual flight routes. We may not be able to do this. I may not be able to be there because I may have to do something else. And then he talks about how he wants to be there. He's going to be there because he's going to be doing such and such. I mean, he is one big walking contradiction throughout this entire video. And I mean, what a clown this guy is. What a complete clown. But let's let him listen to it, because I'm sure a lot of people have not heard it yet, considering it just came out today. So here we go, folks. And if anybody has anything to say, as always, just start talking and I'll stop it. Here we go.
I'm starting my own airline. Kind of. There's a flight that's considered impossible by some people, and that's this flight here, Buenos Aires to Perth. But I'm going to charter a plane and fly some of you there. I'll explain it all. Coming up. Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel, 74 Gear, is all about aviation. Now apparently some people in the Flat Earth community are not a big fan of my channel. They've called me a fraud, among other mean things, and you know I'm super sensitive, so it's time for Flat Earthers to put their money where their mouth is. In 2021, I made a very simple video offering how Flat Earthers could prove the Earth was flat or not without doing crazy laser science experiments. And that was made for everyday people who aren't scientists or engineers, something that anybody can prove for themselves whether the Earth is flat or not. Charter a plane, fly from Argentina down to Australia, and then they can see that we took off, turned south, and that...
Yeah, anybody that has tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe that should have been a little, caveat, but whatever.
That would be it. Seems pretty simple and easy, right? But some people have written me saying I'm not keeping my promises of the challenge to fly them around the world.
Oh, you said you'd be pilot, and you said if we chose your company, but you won't even tell us who his company is. So this is the kind of thing, this is why I said, hold these people's feet to the fire.
But I wanted them to organize the trip, not me. Listen to what I said. Let's get a bunch of Flat Earthers together that you get at your conventions. You can sell some tickets. Hey, you can even make some profit on it. It doesn't really matter to me, but you can charter this aircraft and go anywhere you want to go.
Jeran, didn't he say at one point that he would be the pilot?
Yeah, and he says charter this aircraft, and there's a lot of mention of his company. And then when we tried to call him out on it and say, okay, get us the price, he's like, oh, I don't do that kind of thing. I'm like, okay, well, you said it would be your plane, your company, so do me a favor, get me the price for a plane flying for. And he's like, I'm not doing that. Like, well, then what are you doing? I'm not playing games with you. I can't. I don't know who to call. I don't even know where you would begin that. I said, if you're somebody who has a plane and a company and you're a pilot, why wouldn't you just go to your company and say, hey, what would be the price for me to fly a plane from Argentina to Perth? Blah, 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 blah. And then they come back and say 750,000. Then if he came and told me that, then what I could do is work out the mathematics on how much it would cost each person. And I could ask the community, hey, who wants to go on this flight? If you pay 2,000, you get a ticket, pay 5,000, you get 3 tickets, whatever. And we could make sure that the flight price is covered. And yeah, he says in that video that he'll be the pilot, he'll fly it. And then when we call him on it, he wanted nothing to do with it. He says, I'm not a travel agent.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. I said, well, then give me the name of your company and I'll call him. Oh, I'm not going to give you the name of the company I fly for. So what do you want me to do?
Yeah,
how am
exactly.
I supposed to be a pilot if he can't give me the name of the company he works for?
What a weasel. Yeah, because I thought I remembered that also, him saying that. But, and the other thing, of course, I would ask is, Can you also show us, how you got around the Antarctic Treaty legally, how you get around the FAA's regulations on being within 2,000 miles of a full service airstrip,
I think you have
taboo
to have
covered
4
all that.
engines.
I'm sorry.
I think you have to have 4 engines.
Okay, so there are
for 1 engine. There's laws for 2. There's laws for that kind of thing.
okay, but for even going into that zone, or flying over it, and maybe we should ask Ben about this, but even though you wouldn't be touching down on the continent itself, it seems like that whole place is still a no-fly zone, except for the people that are going down there that are authorized, right?
Correct.
As far as I know, yes. I know that the
Okay.
South Pole is certainly a no-fly zone, but I'm not sure about the outskirts.
Yeah,
well,
I'm
his
not
little
sure either.
picture shows right over the freaking continent, bro.
Well, then he goes on to say, I mean, this is where he's very tricky. Then he goes on to say at the end of this video, now that's not the flight path. That's not the flight plan. He just drew a line. So the flight plan might even end up going not near Antarctica, which is then would defeat the whole purpose of the flight.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, that's what we want to charter, dude. That's what we want to see. I want to fly over the top of Amundsen Scott Station. You know what I mean? That's what I want to see. And I want to see, I want to see where these bases, for example, we could say, okay, they say that Davis is here. Amundsen Scott is supposed at 90 South, right? But there's a crap ton of Antarctic bases down there. And what we would do, basically say, okay, let's start at one coast of Antarctica and say, I want to fly over the top of this base. And then I'm going to fly over Amundsen Scott at the supposed dead center at 90 South. And then I want to come out on the other side of Antarctica, on the opposite side, right? At such and such a base, obviously, because if we can go down and see the base there, then that's a pretty good indicator, right? But that's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. So again, and they even tell you that, well, I can't guarantee that's the route they would take. Well, what do you mean? That's what we want to charter. What kind of an excuse is that?
Because I can guarantee you it wouldn't be the route they would take. I looked into it too,
Jeran. It's
Jeran,
impossible.
Yeah, and what they write about it too, you would have your Antarctic Treaty, and the other things they write is especially with passenger flights that it's important to keep them safe en route and as close to land, and never, if you were to go there, it would not get them close for an emergency landing and that. So there's a lot written about why they don't do the pass down there, and you wouldn't be able to get around that with the passenger safety. There's like the passenger safety ones that you can't be within so many miles. You have to be within so many miles of a place you can land in case of an emergency. They'll never, not only is it impossible to take it, but they have all the rules in place that he can talk the talk but not walk the walk.
Yeah. And why is it that other aircraft can go down there? The people that are working down there, why is it okay for them to do that? It's like there should be, if this wasn't such a secret thing, obviously a dispensation could be made. And, it just makes no sense what he's saying. And he contradicts and double speaks all the way through this dumbass speech. Let's continue.
I didn't say I wanted to organize your trip. I said you could organize a trip. You could sell tickets. You could make a profit. I didn't say, oh, let me organize your vacation, because I'm not a travel planner. I'm a pilot. And essentially what that means is when I go to work, I show up to my plane, everything's been fixed, the flight plan has been worked out for me. I show up, walk on the plane, verify that everything on the plane is safe, that we have all the documents that we need, and then I safely fly that plane from one place to another place. That's all I do. Not involved in tickets, selling stuff, handling bags, fueling up the aircraft, none of those things. And I'm not involved in organizing other people's travel plans. And that's why I said you could organize the flight. But apparently that message got lost, and they heard me saying, oh, let me organize your flight. I want to plan it all for you, and I'll fly the plane for you. That's what they heard.
I think we should pull up his old videos at some point and see what he did say. Because I remember something.
Yeah, but after all, there is one challenge with one route.
Exactly.
You don't need to organize anything. We want to go from Buenos Aires to Sydney.
Yeah, it's not organizing.
Yeah. What kind of organization about a flight? We don't want to go to Bahamas and make a vacation.
All I need is a price, and that's it. Because from there, then we can offer tickets, and we can say, if we don't earn enough tickets, then we won't book the flight. And if we do get enough tickets sold, then we will go on the flight. And everybody who's on the flight will be people that paid to go. But the issue becomes him saying that, we're not sure about the flight plan. We're not sure about the pilot. There's a lot of unknowns, so it would never happen. But even if it does happen, it'd be very easy to make sure that the flight is on the right path. Because number one, when you cross Antarctica, which is, if you're talking about the globe model, about 2,500 miles across. And so for 2,500 miles of that flight, left and right out the windows, you should see no water. It should just be ice as far as the eyes can see, because you're 35,000 feet, even with the curve calculator, you can only see about probably 300 miles either direction. So easily, for a good majority of that flight, you would only see ice. And then when you come out of the ice, you should only see water. So it's not a matter of they can take a different path. Could they skirt the edge of Antarctica? Well, they could, but then you would be able to see water on one side, right? Because they're just skirting the edge. So I think it'd be easy to determine whether they flew the right path or not. Obviously, I don't think they fly north and go towards the United States to get there. I don't think. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, you remember what they did on that flight that Greater Sapien collected all the money for, right? All of a sudden, when they did that, and they found out that flat earthers were going to do this, they were going to take compasses and GPS and accelerometers and all this stuff. Then all of a sudden, no, you can't take that stuff. No, sorry. It's like, what kind of bullshit is that?
Didn't they just disappear eventually?
Yeah, and it never took place, and Greater Sapien kept all the money. Lucky guy.
Yeah, and whoever took the money stole it too. So,
yeah.
But that flight is like almost 8,000 miles, and it is. I'm talking about globe math. It's about 8,000 miles, and then on top of that, you're not. The reason I do kind of like the idea of the flight is you're not going with any trade winds there. You're going to actually be in big trouble making that flight in, what did he say, 16 hours?
Yes.
Yeah, so 16 hours would mean you're averaging 500 miles then an hour, because you're going 8,000 miles. So I still do not think that the flight can be done, especially if somebody's in the cockpit or can go in the cockpit and verify, height of the flight. I don't know, if somebody would be able to do that, but I don't think the flight can exist or does exist.
We know it can't. I mean, and if it does, why are they making this so damn hard to find out? Why can't they just show us a damn, 24-hour sun down there? Why do they have to block it off from everybody? Why do they have to make these ridiculous treaty things and then tell us that it's so full of resources that there's enough coal to last us into the next couple of centuries, on and on and on and on and on.
Dude,
I mean,
you just go hover your little magic spaceship out there, maybe just in a Tesla convertible, go out there and chill and videotape a plane going over the ball, man. Over the other side of the ball, you'd show this flight from the outside. It'd be the most epic shutdown of flat earthers ever. It'll never happen.
Nope, it won't. It will never happen. So let's continue on with this.
The Flat Earth community is able to organize Flat Earth conferences, or whatever these are called. So I thought it'd be easy for them to coordinate their own.
Always with the little side shot, all these are stabs. That's all they can do.
Because we can organize a conference with 600 people at a place we're allowed to go. Because you can do that, you should be able to organize a gigantic jet airplane with licensing and FAA regulations in a place that we're not allowed to go. That's restricted airspace. It's the same thing.
We're talking about chartering a flight, which is something that is done every day of the week, every day of the year, every year of the century, right? But this one can't be done.
Well, and by the way, I just want to point out that some guy did contact me, and he was looking into it and trying to see what the price he could come back with. And we had decided on a trip that actually started in Los Angeles, went to Buenos Aires, stayed the night, went from Buenos Aires to Perth, stayed the night, Perth back to LA. So it was a 3-leg trip, and people could buy one of the legs, or they could do the whole trip for a certain price. We were talking about it. And then we came up with, he got the price for me was $755,000. Now, this guy's doing a trip from just Buenos Aires to Perth, and look at the amount that he's saying it's going to cost us. What the hell happened?
Yeah, exactly. This is something that honestly, they screwed up by putting this clown in there to make all these challenges, because now at this point, they're starting to respond in a mainstream type of way by this video that we're watching right here. And it is so obvious to us that they will never be able to make any part of this flight happen under any circumstance or condition, that we need to make a huge stink about it.
That's what I've said too. I think holding their feet to the fire, because they think they're just going to get away with saying that, and then they can go back. It's like the guy, somebody sent me a video of the other day of, the down south, the southern 24-hour cam, the one that's got the watch in the picture, and it rotates around, and it's got the, the north, south, east, west is like behind the mountains, totally showing signs of manipulation, or that it's at least done in layers. So somebody sent me that video, and they're like, hey, how come nobody's responded to this guy's challenge? And in his video, he challenges flat earthers. He says, go down on a cruise to down south past the 60 degree and film the sun not doing what I say it does, and I'll pay for your trip. And then he writes underneath that, it's been 4 years and I've had no takers. It's like, yeah, because a cruise, number one, you'd have to get the perfect date, because you can't go in like March. In March, you're not going to see that. And the cruise, we don't even know if it would go down there to that low of a location. I don't think you get very many boats to go below the 60, or what it would be, 66. And it's just funny. These guys, they all have these little outs where, and again, we can't get away with saying that. Like if let's just make a video and saying, go ahead, fly this plane, book it. And then we'll say, why aren't you booking this flight? It should be easy for you. You can fly any other day. Why can't you fly this day? Right.
Yeah.
Rather than let them put it on us.
Of course. And then of course, what I thought of after that is like, okay, wouldn't it be interesting then if they said, okay, guys, you win, we'll capitulate to everything. You can have your route, you can have your equipment, you can have everything. And of course, at that point, there's no doubt what would be entering my mind. And of course, they're going to say, whoa, see, this is why we shouldn't even do it in the first place. Is that something's going to happen to that plane, right? They cannot let this happen. Well, because it can't, but
I would be a martyr. I'd be a martyr. I'll go.
Would you go? Would you go?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
They're not.
I would almost want to put a condition of, and if it goes down by some mysterious, circumstance, that you guys put a $10 million life insurance policy on every passenger on that plane.
There you go. I would buy a life insurance policy for myself so my family's okay, but I would do it. Screw them.
Are you sure that there's not a technology, not for like commercial, but that they can get you from one place to another? Again, we had the Concorde flying over in a couple of hours over the, getting from New York to London or that. Are you sure? I think they have technology that on a small thing, they might be able to pull something off. So before you say everything is off, again, make sure you get all your equipment, what direction you're going.
Well, does he show you the type of plane it would be? It's like it's a huge, because it has to be 4 engines. You're talking about a huge wide body, extended range, 380, or is that it is, or 340, whatever. And no, I do think that the plane can go fast. I do think that you can break the speed of sound, but I'm not sure about flying over Antarctica. How fast can that plane go? I don't know. Don't you think that any speed would be indicated though, or any height would be indicated in the cockpit?
Well, of course it would be.
Bob?
Yeah, absolutely it would be. And not only that, we can take, if we're allowed to take accelerometers, we can certainly put together a pretty good extrapolation of direction, turns, speed, a lot of things, even if we don't have the advantage of GPS. So, but they, none of that can get out. So I don't know. I mean, we know it's not going to happen, but this is kind of turning into a chess game. But I think the more important thing for people to see is that as we are simply trying to charter a flight, and that's the way we see it, we want to charter a flight and we're willing to pay that flight, but it needs to be the flight that we charter, and watch the hoops that they jump through to come up with excuses not to do it. That will tell the general public more than we ever could. Don't you think?
I think so too. Say hold the feet to the fire.
Yeah.
In chat, I just went and found the video this guy made about all this,
Mhm.
and I screenshotted the closed captioning. And he says right there, if you choose my airline, I will volunteer to fly this plane and blah blah. Yeah, just
That's
like
what I
Jeran said.
thought.
So I chose
Yeah.
I got in touch with him, which took forever. I had to basically go to Instagram and message him a bunch and comment until finally he wrote back. And I said, okay, I'm a flat earther. I'll choose that. Yes, we'll choose your airline, and yes, you can be the pilot. Now I just need a price. And he's like, what? Then tell me the name of your airline. And he says he won't give me the name. So then I just gave up. Like, dude, you're a joker. Why would you tell me that you would be the pilot if we chose your airline? Here I am saying, be the pilot. I'm choosing your airline, and now you're deciding to tell me you're not going to give me the name of your airline. Then I gave up because
I don't know how much this guy even is a 747 pilot. He was going over other mean comments, and somebody was saying how he only had pictures of a single engine plane of him actually flying, and no
Like I said,
actually
he's wearing
in the
co-pilot
cockpit of a
stripes.
747 while it's flying.
He may not have a captain's rating. He probably doesn't because he's wearing co-pilot stripes. And I'm not saying that you can't have a captain's rating and not fly co-pilot, but you would think that he would actually be wearing 4 stripes and not 3. But whatever. I don't know. I don't know how that all works, but I do know what I see. And I pulled up that picture. You guys can't see it, but I'm broadcasting it live. Where it's saying, if you choose my airline to charter the 747 from, I will volunteer to fly that aircraft, and we can all blah, 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 blah. Right? So busted dead to rights, ladies and gentlemen, the guy is a liar. And I bet there's a whole truckload more lies that if we compare what he's saying in this video to what he actually said, and download that video, Zach. Don't let it disappear. Let's hold on to that bad boy, okay?
Yep.
And yeah, I'll look at it and we'll bring it up on another Globebusters. All right, so there you go, guys. And let me flip back.
Cami, do you think that, because this is one of my ideas that I think is better proof, because I agree with you that there could be technology that we don't know about that they can move these planes faster. Maybe for all we know, at 44,000 feet, there's a crazy wind that goes 500 miles per hour. I don't know. We wouldn't know that. No one would tell us. But what do you think about a boat? I mean, a boat cannot have technology that makes it go fast, right?
Exactly. A boat would get that out of right there again. You'd be able to, you have the water underneath you with some gear and you've got some things. You would not be able to fake it in a boat like you did in the air.
And so it's certainly weird that there is no container ships. There is no cruise ships that go New Zealand to South America or Sydney to South America. There is no undersea cables, which again would reveal the fraud if they ran 6,000 feet of cable and they got to the end and were like, holy shit, we're not even close to the shore. What happened? That would reveal it. So I've often said that I think it would be much, much cheaper if we were to get like a cruise ship or a container ship and just go New Zealand to South America. Now that's about a 12-day nonstop trip if it's a globe and 20-day nonstop if it's a flat Earth. So I think that's one where now knowing our luck, the boat would get there in 16 days. And it'd be right in the middle. It's kind of like the whole behind the curve thing, which is the same kind of deal where, of course, the way the movie portrayed it, it made it look like it measured globe, but it didn't. What it actually measured is in the middle, because if you think about it, 17 feet is where Enrique's chest was. 23 feet high was where the globe would put it. And I told him to put the light above his head, which he did. But that light above his head is at about 19 feet. So it actually is even closer to the 17 feet and further away from the 23. But that's why we said interesting, is because we had already seen that we couldn't see it at the flatter side at the 17 feet and we couldn't see it at 23 feet. So then it was like, well, we can't see it. We don't know what's going on. Hold it up above your head. Oh, shit, now we see it. That's 19 feet. That's measuring right in the middle of both. So we walked away thinking nothing happened. But it's kind of the same thing. It seems like always you can't get this definitive kind of answer.
When you're having like the debate at both sides that you're going to defend your opinion no matter what, even if it took the full 22 days, Jeran, you would have them looking for the undercurrents or the special wave that for somehow projected, made it go so slow and slowed everything down because they were going against it in the winds and everything, and it took double what it should have taken. I mean, no matter what, they're going to not give on it. I mean, even if you track the mileage and do things exact, they're going to say, you say, well, here's my equipment tracked. They'll say, oh, well, equipment can be fudged and this can be fudged. Again, you would have to, they're going to, no matter what you do on this, come with a counter. We've seen that time and time and time again. And so,
yeah, I guess
again, I saw the creative editing. I was there again with Bob. I was there when they videotaped everything they did with Bob, and what I saw in the movie and what I saw them getting into clips. Again, I've lost all glimpses of what they can do to reality when they spin it for the media.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that they have no scruples. Obviously, they had an agenda. They fulfilled
an agenda.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, let's continue on.
Flight, but I was wrong, and I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong, and it's all right. I organized it for you.
Are you going to admit that you're a goddamn liar too, Mr. Clown?
Now, I got a lot of different messages of, we should start here, I want to start here, we should end back where we started, we should do it like this, I want to do this. And so it got very confusing, but there was one consistent message that I got from everybody, and that was this. This is the undoable flight to the Flat Earth community. It's Buenos Aires to Perth, Australia. Now, I made this a straight line, but this is not a flight plan. So it took me a bit of legwork to find somebody who had the plane that had that type of range, the availability, the crews, because they're going to have to fly to Buenos Aires with a whole crew, land there empty, and then they're going to have that crew layover and then prepare for the flight back, which is going to be roughly 16 hours. Now, since I have a regular job that I sometimes vlog about, like in this one, I can't coordinate everything myself. So included in the costs are funds for me in order to hire some people to organize everything because I have a regular job, and hire a documentary crew because you better believe I'm going to document this entire thing. Now, I have to give the Flat Earthers credit here because some of them do believe there is a massive wall there. So if they believe that this flight is impossible and they're willing to fly down to Buenos Aires and think about risking their life to get on a plane, get way outside their comfort zone and take off to fly south, I have to respect that. I have to respect anybody who's willing to do something way outside their comfort zone and have it recorded, like our friend Stella here.
Pull it back a little bit more.
To be clear, I'm the one that's chartering this aircraft and you're coming along as my guest, which means that I have the rights to record everything. You're getting no points, no lounge access.
Jesus, this guy's unbelievable. First, he's not sure. Well, maybe that hasn't come up yet. But there's a point. Well, I don't know if I can go. I may not be able to get off. And I'm definitely going to hire a crew because I'm organizing this. I mean, it's flip, flop, flip, flop. Are you going to be there or not, dude? I mean, my God, what a clown.
And by the way, of course, there is impossible to do that flight route based on the straight line because nobody can pass over Antarctica. But it will be nice if, I don't know if it's possible with only one plane, but make the circumference to Antarctica, the outside perimeter, trying to...
That would be cool.
That'd be cool
That
as
would
hell.
or at least one half, whatever.
Yeah, it's further.
The fact that there is more, because of course in the flat Earth it's huge difference.
Right.
If you want to circumnavigate Antarctica, but in the spherical model must be much easier, and that is also impossible.
It still would be more than any plane can go. I think around
Yeah, that's the problem.
13,000 miles. Yeah.
Well, we can be prepared to emergency landing. We take some parachutes with us, and the rest take care of this clown,
All right. Okay, let's continue. Boy, this guy is so full of shit. What a winner. I mean, he even looks like a weasel. So he's doing his weasel job really well. I'm sorry, that may be an add-on, but honestly, he makes me sick.
He's boosted up.
What?
Just pretty sure he's boosted up, man. Let's be patient with him.
Yeah, no doubt.
You're going to have to organize getting yourself down to Buenos Aires, and then you'll have to worry and make sure that you have the visa and necessary paperwork in Perth, and then worry about getting yourself from Perth to wherever it is that you live. Because I know there's flat earthers from all over the world, so I wanted to make it easy. All you have to do is get yourself to this one location, and
he wants to make it easy by putting all the worry on all the stupid things that we do, that anybody that has ever flown on a single airline flight in their life has done a million times. What an idiot. I mean, he's trying to, kind of subconsciously dissuade people. Oh, you got to do all this worry and all this other stuff, but I want it to be real comfortable for you. But you know, oh my God, I about puked the first time I saw this. Let's continue.
We're going to do one flight together. You can organize your hotels, getting to and from the hotel, and getting to the airport and from the airport in Perth. You can organize all that stuff on your own because I'm not going to coordinate a 6-day around the world trip. I don't have time for that. Now, like I mentioned,
and yet he's going to charge everybody for it. Earlier, he said, "Oh, I'm definitely going to put in my fees for doing all this for you," right? It's like, what is it going to be? What is it going to be? Man, I would love to just belt this guy, honestly.
I also
mentioned earlier.
Whoops, go ahead.
No, I was just looking back at my messages to him, and it was actually, crazily enough, a year ago, almost exactly the day, April 16th of 2021. But the other thing that I was saying on here is, when to go. I thought that we should go in January because then it's 24-hour sun, supposedly. So we'd be able to, from the time we take off till the time we land, you should never see darkness. He didn't do that. I think he says he wants to do it in October, so he went against that. But I'm just reading here. I told him I need info on the cost, seats, dates, etc. I said, "Hey, Kelsey, thanks for replying to the comment. We want to talk about the flight. I can raise the money and sell tickets, etc., but I don't know where to start. I assume the first place will be to fund it, but I don't have any idea of the price. So if you can find that out for me, what would be the cost to charter the 747? How many people it will hold? Then from there, I can do the rest. I'll start a GoFundMe. I think the easiest would be LA to Buenos Aires to Perth, Perth to LA. I bet I can get a film crew as well. You can fly. I just need a price so we can start promoting it. Maybe fly in January of next year." And he never responded to that one. I think on the comments, if I go to his video or his post, I'll find where we were talking and where he basically just said, "I'm not going to do it." So, yeah. And I'm not asking for much. What I'm saying is I will do all the legwork, but I need to know, I need to set the prices for the tickets. So I need to know, can the flight do that? Can we go those locations? And can we go on a date that we agree on? It's not even hard what I was asking for.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny, though, to hear him tell this story. Like, nobody's ever booked a flight before. It's like, come on, man. It's a chartered flight. You book it, you go, you get on, you go where you want to go, where you've paid for them to take you. End of story. Nobody ever talks about where you're going to stay at a hotel or what meal. I mean, get real. And he's sitting there focused on these little micro details and how he's so stressed out about it, and he shouldn't have to worry about it for us. But since he is, he's going to charge us a fee for it. But, oh, God. Let's continue.
I'm not flying the plane, and pilots don't control the flight path anyways. That's set up by dispatchers. So this is...
Do dispatchers control the charter?
Is just a point-to-point line. I'm not saying that's the route we're going to fly. What I can tell you is that we're going to take off from Buenos Aires. We're going to be flying south, and we're going to end up in Perth. The flight's going to be roughly 16 hours, which is not possible on your flat Earth map. I think I read somewhere that someone said that it would be roughly 30 hours on this flat Earth map. Something that's important if you are going to...
Why couldn't we fly straight? What about if we went to the north route? I mean...
Well, that would be obvious because I think you wouldn't ever see ice below you. So that, I don't think they can get away with that. But they could get away with just going out through the Southern Ocean, get it at a certain level where there's... I mean, I think that you could probably find 150 or 100 mile per hour winds going in that direction, even though the major winds are the other direction. That's why I like the flight too, that it's not, if it was Perth to Buenos Aires, I feel differently about it because I do think that planes going that way make up a lot of time. But if it's 100 mile per hour wind, and, I've looked at it and I've said, I could see that flight is, I'm looking at my own Google Earth here. If you just left Buenos Aires and you could start going south, but then you just kind of skirt along Antarctica and then end up over in Perth. Yeah, I mean, I could see him maybe making it in 15, 16 hours at the best on a globe. So from there, anything beyond that, but then like you said, like Cami said, let's say that the flight takes 19 hours. They're just going to say, oh, we hit some winds. And so, but then we might say, well, then it's a lot longer than you thought. No. We just, I don't think anything definitive comes of it. He's making it sound like we say that the flight can't happen. Well, we're talking about flying over the Antarctica, right? We're talking about, we know that there's flights that go from Santiago to Sydney. It's not really that much different of a flight. I mean, how far is Santiago from you, Iru? Like a couple hundred miles or 1,000? A couple
Santiago?
hundred. Yeah.
Chile. I took a flight 2 years ago to attend a conference there. It's about 2 hours and a half, something like that.
Okay, so probably less than 1,000 miles, right? Yeah. So 1,000 miles there, and then Perth is about a good 2 or 2,500, I think, from Sydney. right? So it's only adding about 3,500 miles to a flight that they do every day. So it's not like that impossible, but what's impossible about it is obviously them going across Antarctica. That's what's impossible. So we already know that the flight from Sydney to Santiago skirts kind of the edge there. I'm not even sure those people see Antarctica. It's just out over the.
And what's amazing is he's sitting there telling us to do it, and even his own people on his own side, via their treaties and their regulations, the FARs, the Federal Aviation Regulations, state, you know, this rule, which I'll bet you is not valid anywhere else in the world besides what would be applicable to Antarctica about being within a certain range or no flies or anything like that, right? This would be so unique to Antarctica that in and of itself, you would have to ask yourself, why was this rule even created if it would be for Antarctica only? Why would you incorporate that into the worldwide aviation rules, right? Doesn't make much sense.
No, and I would like what those numbers are anyway, how close you have to be to, because I mean, Bob, let's say a plane loses all power at 35,000 feet. So at that point, they're saying that a plane can coast down and land somewhere thousands of miles away? Or
I'm sorry, say that again now?
So let's say a plane leaves Santiago, Chile, and they get out over the Southern Pacific, and the plane loses all power. Okay, so it's got no more engines, everything shuts off, the plane's just dead in the sky. How far could that plane float down?
Not far.
So you're not going to get to an emergency airport anyway.
Yeah, no, that thing's going to drop like a friggin' stone. They're not exactly gliders.
And I do think maybe it could glide for a little bit, but I'm not for.
Now without any power, that thing's going to come out of. Jeez, no, it's going to come out of the ground.
Dispatch. Was anybody else really caught on him saying that we don't get to do our flight plan anyway? Dispatch does it. It all goes to dispatch. What is dispatch? Is that like control in?
Dispatch has nothing to do with the flight route that you file. Dispatch is dispatch.
What he said though. He said we just say that we want to
that.
get here, but he said dispatch does all of that, and it made me think of control with Get Smart. It's like dispatch control or whatever, and they program your computer to get you to one place to another. But again, why wouldn't you file your flight plan?
No, you file the flight plan with them, right? They don't sit there and tell you where to go. You file the flight plan with them to tell them where you're going. I know that. He's
Bob,
an idiot.
But Bob, you might be right about small planes. Like you have to file your flight plan and then send it to them. But not. I think that the big airliners are. Because here's what I think happens. I think
But
computer.
on a charter flight, Jeran? That
I don't
make
know.
any sense.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
there should be no difference.
Yeah,
in
that's
fact,
true.
I would think that a commercial flight would have more latitude. But, that's just me.
I just think that these are all programmed into a computer, and this is why you can take off 45 minutes late on your flight and still get there on time. It's because all the computer program is doing is telling the planes what to do so that they get there when they're supposed to. So it doesn't really matter if you're a little bit late taking off because the plane will make it up. It will decide what flight level to fly at and what speed to fly at, and it doesn't even need to tell the pilot that. The pilot's just sitting in the cockpit.
Yeah,
exactly. They just get told to go to a different layer of air. And again, you're different things. You make up or you lose time when you're too much ahead of schedule and that. Exactly, Jeran. It does that. And dispatch, I think your dispatch is going to find what I was looking at with your passenger flight rules and that. They supposedly don't want you to be very far away from landing that. So it's going to route your plane. I don't get to pick the route. They're going to want to keep you along coastlines the entire time and not Antarctica ones where it's military.
This is about a sightseeing tour. We need to see something. This is a site. Do they tell people that charter a flight that want to fly over, something near Easter Island or wherever? Well, no, you can't go there. Well, we want to see this from the air. Why? Do they tell them no? Of course not. It's just stupid. But they will come up with every reason in the world. Oh, it's for your own good. It's for your own safety. We don't want to endanger the penguins it's all so retarded. And that's what really needs to be pressed here is the absurdity of their argument. And of course, ultimately, they're going to come down to the safety of the passengers in the aircraft. And, and then they're going to lay it off on that. But otherwise, it would not be a problem. But that's a lie. And we know it, and they know it. And I think that the more creative they have to get with their excuses as we press them on it, the more it's going to become really apparent to a lot of people that they are hiding something. They're hiding something big. And so, yeah, keep that in mind, guys. All right, let's continue.
Plan to come and be a guest on this flight is that you purchase yourself a Southern Hemisphere compass, because the compasses in the southern part of the world are different than the northern part of the world for the round Earth people. But just for you flat Earth people, I would buy a Southern Hemisphere compass, so that way you can see as we take off, we're going to be flying south, and you can prove that we're...
You mean the ones that don't work over Antarctica? Southern Hemisphere continents do not work beyond either 60 or 70 south. They don't work. And not only that,
tip red. Don't they just paint the other tip red on the compass?
Yeah,
they do, and you should be able
differently,
to
supposedly.
Jeran, I know, but Jeran is correct on that one. If it really was a compass and going to the points, your other points should just be your compass should just flip over and work.
No. There's the difference between a northern hemisphere and a southern hemisphere compass is the way the needles are weighted.
I know that entirely. They do it because of the pull down, but I'm saying if the globe worked the way they said it worked, it would not be that. It wouldn't always be trying to go towards the North Pole. You would just flip the magnet around on your compass.
Right. But the problem with that
it doesn't work that way.
The problem with that is the magnetic South Pole isn't even on the Antarctic continent.
Of course. Yeah, I know. That's why I said that's what I mean. Is it doesn't work. It's absurd. So him even bringing a compass into it is absurd.
Yeah, what a bunch of bullshit. This guy doesn't know anything, man. God, it's scary to think he's a pilot.
And now that you mention it, I mean, flying south, if you were doing that by a compass, you're not even going to be close to south, because south is going to be way over east.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that, of course, is why when you go east 090 or 270 on Google Earth, it intersects to the equator, no matter what. Everything is a vector to the equator. Why? Because that's where the sun and the moon have to be, in that region. And because they are small, that's the only place that they can be perceived, is directly over the Earth in those positions. Otherwise, they wouldn't have to do stupid stunts like that, right? We know that. But they tell us it's a great circle route thing. What a bunch of horse shit.
And I'm looking it up. It's got to be a real important job, the aircraft dispatcher, because they have a 8-week program where you're ready in 8 weeks. So it takes 8 weeks to learn how to do this. But basically it says, this is one for Southwest Airlines, talking about these positions, what they do. It says, airports have automated flight plans, but an aircraft dispatcher is required to override certain flight plans if needed. They monitor all flights, suggest alternative actions should the need arise. They need to be able to utilize complex computer systems that select the correct altitude for flights according to flight calculations. So yeah, it's all meant to get planes where they're supposed to go, where they're supposed to be at a certain time. And the pilot would never know if you all of a sudden bumped that plane up to a flight level and it was moving with a 300 mile per hour wind. How would the actual pilot know that? I don't think they would know.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be nice?
It doesn't sound like the dispatcher knows either, other than entering information into the computer. It doesn't look, they're not doing any routing themselves. They're saying the computer is doing the routing. So what they see and what they get can be very different at that point.
Mm-hmm. I think so too.
And you know what else is going to be a problem? Remember when I bought that subscription for a month to, was it Flight Radar or whatever it was?
Yeah.
And the reason I did it is because one of the features is that they would tell you the winds and loft values at all the different flight levels.
No, they don't, though.
But they don't. And it's like, well, wouldn't you need to know that if you were flying down there? Of course you would. So that would be nice to have that provided also. I mean, my God, as always, the preponderance of evidence as to why these guys really can't go is so over the top voluminous that it boggles the mind. And all they can do is backpedal, and then sit there and call us crazy and stupid because we doubt them. It's like, these people they're psychopaths, point blank. Let's continue.
I'm watching real quick.
Oops.
I'm just watching a video of these aircraft supposed dispatchers, and all their maps are flat maps, like Mercator maps. I'm just wondering, wouldn't that cause a problem if you are telling planes which direction to go on a Mercator map, but really they're flying around a globe? I guess maybe not, but it's just funny that all their maps are. You think you need a globe to do that?
You think, yeah.
On some extreme rocket ship.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say maybe we need Wolfie to do this because Wolfie, he does all his own flight plans.
Yeah.
He doesn't need.
Boy, I'll tell you, Wolfie's been getting his butt ripped lately a lot. I couldn't think of a nicer guy for it to happen to, though. So, all right, let's continue.
Shooting across the flat Earth globe. So I planned this flight in October because I wanted to give myself time to coordinate everything, give you all time to raise the funds necessary to do this flight, and also because in October it will be springtime in the Southern Hemisphere, and I'm not trying to go when it's extremely cold, so I'm planning it to be in the Southern Hemisphere time of spring of October. Because if I wait...
Wouldn't it be better to wait till summer when the conditions would be more or less ideal and the 24-hour sun? Wow, wouldn't that be a bonus, right? There's no way that we could not see the 24-hour sun at that point, right? If we went down there like on the solstice or December, right, the week between Christmas and New Year's, wow. There's no way that we could not see the 24-hour sunshine. Why? Because we're on an airplane. We're going to be above cloud level.
It would be on the right side of the plane the entire trip.
You're damn right it would be. And they know that. And of course, then they have to backpedal more and more and more and make up more excuses. I mean, this guy was an idiot. He really screwed up by coming out with this challenge. And I think we really need to make a stink about it because, what a wonderful tool this guy is, right? Let's keep going.
Waited until November, December, people would say, oh, it's too close to the holidays. So I picked October. I thought that would give time for everybody, time for you to go spend time with your family. Middle of October shouldn't interrupt anyone's family.
Isn't it funny? He's so worried about what everybody else is going to be doing in between them. It's how he picked it. And it's like, and everything, all the reasons he's picking it for are irrelevant to all of this. It's like,
hey, after all, if I pay, I choose, right?
Yeah, exactly. I want to go
capitalistic world view, right?
I want to fly over Edmondson Scott on December 23rd. Can I do it or not? And of course, you can't. And I also want to be there at a point. Maybe we can do it at midnight, 2 a.m, whatever. At some point, we will be airborne so that we can be above cloud level. So no matter where the sun is, we'll be able to see it. There's no way they can hide that. Unless they put in those windows, with the cameras, about those?
Yeah, I think we'd be able to tell that.
Personally. I think so too. But I'm just saying, that would be something they'd probably try. And in fact, I can just about guarantee you that, with the way CGI and computer graphics are going, that these so-called passenger flights to space, this is going to be standard equipment. VR windows, right? They won't know any difference.
Yeah, I think you can maybe can distinguish a real window from those one. If from outside you can see inside,
Yeah, but I mean,
I don't think they're gonna put like a Windows two-side LED.
Do you ever remember the first time you saw like a 4K image like on a Best Buy demo TV?
Yeah.
Shit. I couldn't believe.
This looks realer than real.
Oh, it's real. It is.
You have 8K now.
Now you got 8K. Now you got even more resolution. Yeah. It's like, wow. So to think that they wouldn't be able to, pass that off. No, they have that type of technology, and you always have to be aware of that. And we've been talking about that for a long time. The technologies that they do have there, they don't want to keep that under wraps because then people wouldn't be making money on it. So we know about it, therefore it's going to be a lot harder to fool us. So there you go. All right, let's continue.
planned, so they should be able to make it. Now, if you were planning on coming on this trip just so you could hang out with me, I want to remind you, I'm not even 100% sure that I'm going to be able to go. And because...
What? Then what are we paying you this fee for, dude? What? I thought you were going to hire a camera crew. What? I thought you were going to be there to watch over your precious project. What? Can you double speak anymore?
I don't have vacation during that time, and I don't know what my schedule is going to be in October.
Oh, poor you. You'd only be doing something that would be monumental, that would be heard around the world. What a moron you are, sir.
October. I'm going to try to go. Absolutely, I'm going to try to go because I want to be there and I want to be and see the documentary, and I really want to go to Perth because Perth has these cute little things as soon as I get there. And since there are some flat earthers that also have YouTube channels, I'm very excited to see their videos explaining how I was able to get a bunch of people in Texas to talk with an Australian accent and convince their dogs to jump around on 2 feet. I created a Kickstarter campaign, and the thing that I like about Kickstarter is that it's all or nothing. Meaning if we don't raise enough funds, nobody has to pay anything, myself included. The other thing you need to realize is that people are pledging money when they do a Kickstarter campaign. That means there will be people who will say, oh, I'll give $5,000, thinking that it will never get funded. And in doing so, that $5,000, when it comes time to pay up, there will be people who say, I'm not going to pay. And that means just because the target got met, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to actually commit and pay the money. Unless we have the money, we're not going anywhere. Now, it also means that until we have the money, I can't secure the aircraft. What I'm planning on is October 20th. I picked October 20th because, well, I honestly was going to pick October 13th because it's International Skeptics Day or something like that, but I picked October 20th. That's going to make it more easy and more likely for me to be able to bid my schedule in order to have that time off to do this flight. So that is when I'm...
Oh, and now all of a sudden he's planning on going again. It's like, God, you know, there are a few people that do this to me, but I seriously would like to put my fist through his face. He makes me that angry. What a goddamn freaking weasel this guy is. Wow.
I'm planning to organize this flight. Now, I think it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway since I received a lot of messages about this, why I didn't organize this sooner. One, I thought you all were going to organize it in the Flat Earth community, but since you chose not to, I said, okay, I'll do it once Perth opens. Now, Western Australia has been closed for a long time. Ask any of the people that are in Perth or Western Australia, they've been trying to get out of prison for a while. And now that it's open, I wanted to give it a little bit of time to make sure it was going to stay open before I organized this flight. I was actually working on this last year, but then Perth, I think they were going to open and then they decided not to open, and then now they did open, and so now we're doing this. Part of Australia was opened up, but this side, Western Australia, was not open, and Perth is in Western Australia. Now, October is a long time away, so if something changes, like a new strain of COVID comes out, or the borders close, or there's some seating capacity rules that get changed, I don't control any of that. Just like I'm not controlling the plane, I'm just chartering this aircraft and organizing it and flying as a normal passenger. So if any of that stuff changes, I have no say or control over that. I also can't confirm the date because these people aren't going to reserve the plane and the crew until I pay some money, and no offense, but I'm not going to give them a huge chunk of money until you all have given me the money. Then I'll go give them the money to do this flight. So that date's not confirmed. Once all the money's been raised and the money's been paid, I'll go reserve the aircraft. They'll organize the crew and the plane and get all that stuff locked in. So that's when it's going to get firm. Luckily, you have a lot of people in the Flat Earth community, like this guy, with huge chunks of cash ready to donate for this flight to happen. I'm going to be honest, Flat Earth people, there's a lot of people who don't think you all will raise the money to do it. I'm hoping that you do, because I want to go on the flight, I want to make the documentary, I want to go to Perth. So I want to do all those things. I'm cheering that you guys are going to make it. If you're planning on coming on this flight just to hang out with me, just so you know, I want to be really clear, I've done these 16-hour flights before. I'm not a huge fan of them. I'm going to be riding as a passenger, which means I'm going to eat my meal, which is going to be included in the price. I'm going to eat my meal, and then I'm going to try to go to sleep because...
Oh my God. God,
I am not going to control the plane. That is the
I can't
ultimate
control
goal.
anything. I don't know if I'm going to do anything. I'm going to charge you money, and I'm rooting for you.
His company, and he's going to fly it. What happened to that?
Yeah, whatever happened to that? You're right. I thought he was
just a guy,
747
intermediate
pilot.
guy between you and the flight.
Ay, caramba. I mean,
Whatever.
where did they, I mean, they could not have come up with a worse spokesman. This guy is a weasel on the 10 to the 120th level. You know what I mean? I mean, he's double speak. He's a liar. He looks like a clown, and he infuriates me. He really does. I can't believe it.
He's a YouTuber. I mean, that's what he is. He's a glorified YouTuber.
He's a red hair YouTuber. I just joking.
Yeah, redheaded stepchild YouTuber.
But yeah, the prices are a joke. Number one, nobody's going to ever pay that much to fly on that flight. Period. I wouldn't even dare try and raise that much money for me to go on the flight.
No, and I would never trust him ever. You know,
I would never trust you on a 16-hour flight with him.
Yeah.
I seriously, it's like no, bad idea. Even if you're on different sides of the plane, it's a real bad idea. He really pisses you off.
Yeah, no, he does. I can't even describe. Well, obviously, this has probably been worth it to everybody just to see me get so fucking riled up over this guy. I mean, wow, do I not like him? Holy cow. All right, let's listen to the last couple of minutes, and then I'm sick of him. I have to go throw up.
I'm not trying to be awake for 16 hours, and I already know the shape of the Earth because I've seen it. My advice to any of you that are planning to do this flight, and if you're planning to really seriously do it, I'd plan on going down to Argentina, spending a couple days there in Buenos Aires. It's a really cool city. Spend a couple days there. Then you're there, you're rested, you're ready to do the flight. You can stay up for the whole flight and look out the window and do whatever you want to do within reason, obviously, on the flight. Then you're going to land in Perth, and then when you're there in Perth, there's a lot of cool things that you can go see, like these quokkas. That's the thing that I really want to see out there, but that will give you the chance to rest, and then you can spend a couple days there in Perth, and then you can go to the other side of Australia before you fly out, because a lot of the international flights come out of Sydney. And because you're able to organize these types of meetings, I'm hoping you're able to organize and raise these funds. So this is the total amount of money that you need to raise. The link to the Kickstarter campaign is right there in the description. You can go in there and be a part of this thing, and you can either come ride the plane or you can donate just to see that it happens. Like I said, I'm going to make some money on it, but I also have money set aside for there to be crews to help organize it, because I'm not going to do it, and documentary people because I don't know how to do that. As you can see, the best I got is a camera in a hotel room. That's kind of the realm of my abilities of documenting something. So I'm going to get some professionals to put this thing together. I think it's going to be really cool. If you want to see the first Flat Earth video that I ever did, check out this video here. And if you want to see a group of people who I'm pretty sure I could convince that the Earth was flat based on their other ideas that they have, check out this video up here. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.
Oh, you're going to hear from us, buddy. And I would really, oh man, wow. Okay, guys, so there you have it. That was actually a really good suggestion, Dave, for something to comment on. I didn't expect the emotional response it would invoke in me, but I have never seen a bigger lying weasel in my life. It's just unbelievable, this guy. So there you have it. All right, guys, so we are, gosh, almost an hour over. I apologize for that. But I think it's a pretty good show otherwise, and we'll let you know how everything goes tomorrow. And you know, like I said, send in those questions, put in the comments, and I will ask Ken if I get the opportunity. I should, obviously, and we'll go from there. So let's go around one more time for anything that anybody else has. And Ira, you didn't get to say a whole lot, so if you have anything that you want to say to everybody, go for it.
Well, hello everybody. No, No, we, like I mentioned last week, we having a Flat Earth conference in the province or state, I think you call it, called Santa Fe, Saint Fate. That is the name of the province because we have a lot of Jesuit, territories down here or outside here in Argentina. And it was really, really nice because a lot of people, came to the conference. 60% already flat earthers and 40% new ones, bring by their friends flat earthers with a really high, gradient of age and gender and that kind of stuff, and different professions, things like this. Around 140, 150 people came to the event. So that is also an indicator, because we made in a really small city, a city with only 1,100 people. It was not the capital of that state. It was more like a, small city, and having full room. It was nice to see, that the movement keep growing. And in fact, in 30 days, we're going to make the first Flat Earth conference here in Buenos Aires, in the capital city, for 300 people, and already sold more than half of the tickets. So, just in 5 days, and that also bring, the idea that the people keeps growing, and in terms of, trying to understand the world that we live in. So, that was very nice to get back to action, because after these 2 years of lockdowns and, everything was blocked in terms of interaction between humans, now come back to that is a really nice feeling.
Awesome. Well, that's cool. It's good that even all this crazy stuff's going on, that we can still have get-togethers and conferences, and it really hasn't slowed us down a lot. I mean, because Karen's put on, 3 or 4 events since all this has happened, and they're still going on all around the world. And in fact, more so now than ever before. Now that people have the app and are finding out about each other. And, I think all things considered, we're doing quite well. So I'm glad to hear all that's going well for you, Eero.
Thank you. I learned a lot of, from the first Flat Earth conference in 2017, and then I tried to, recreate that atmosphere in the Spanish community, and I think we did it, because we started in 2019, and we didn't stop beside this pandemic thing, but we keep growing and keep doing things, trying to bring people. Remember that in 2020, the last Madrid in Spain conference, we bring a commercial pilot to give a lecture, in the conference, and the guy is going to be again, not here in Argentina, but we're going to make again in September in Spain. So the idea is to bring more people together and, just give their opinions and share their research, and that's all.
Cool. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and go around to Zack. What do you got? Any final comments on this?
Yeah, I think this is never going to happen, this whole plane thing. I think it's nonsense. And I really just can't wait for the Ken Wheeler discussion coming up, just to hear how it goes and, all the good stuff.
Yeah, I agree. That'll put some light back on a positive thing. Is yeah, wow. All right, cool. All right, then let's move on to Austin. What's going on in your neck of the woods, and what's got coming up?
Chris and I actually had to come back down to Key West court for him tomorrow. Finishing up this little motion that we're going to send in. Got to be tactical about what all we say about it. So we're kind of putting together a documentary of all these different court cases that we're fighting. So once we get a little further ahead or down the road, we can kind of show everyone what's been going on. But so I got all that coming on, and the deadline coming up for my appeals to be filed and the other 2. And then we got civil and blah, blah, blah. But so that's kind of consuming a lot of my time. I should be back home, I don't know, a few days, and around Wednesday or Thursday, and then we're going to move the RV, and then I'll finally maybe get to start making content again. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on. I'll try to sneak some streams in there, but just kind of busy behind the scenes, but can't really tell everyone everything. So yeah, and good luck. I'm excited that we've managed to set up a conversation with Ken Wheeler. I think that's awesome. And yeah, looking forward to it. Hopefully there's some bridges, or some whatever you would say. We mend the bridges.
Yeah, connection bridges.
There you go.
Yep. All right, sounds good. Cami, anything new with you? You got any shows coming up with anybody or anything?
Oh, I do. I have coming up on, I think, May 2nd. I'm going to be on Melodome. And we've got an Iron Room on Friday nights. More than that, I tried to segue into it on Next Level several times, and we just kept on getting off track. But I did want to do a shout out to documentary Next Level and all of the people in it. And I've been dropping links in the chat on that new documentary out. Things are going forward, and again, overall, there's a lot of good things going on right now.
Awesome. Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, let me, I just want to give a shout out to several people that have left tips in Rockfin. Of course, we are currently demonetized on YouTube, so we can't send any super chats or anything like that. But Julie Bennett, as always, thank you so much. Very generous tip. You are so appreciated. Much appreciated. No comment with the tip. James Ritchie also sent a very generous tip. Thank you so much for that, James. Robert Zafar says, always, just very consistent. Love you, buddy. Much appreciated. And we're really lucky to have you as a supporter. Anyword says, Ken Wheeler, pressure mediation, counterspace, nukes conversation would be amazing. Nuke discussion could go sideways, though. Yeah, it could. But you know what? I'm not nearly as passionate about, the idea. I mean, as you know, I don't believe that nukes exist. People say, what are you talking about? Nuclear power plants exist. It's like, yeah, of course they do. There's a completely different operating philosophy there and how they work. Just because a power plant exists doesn't mean that they can split the atom and blow up the whole damn world. It's absurd, but whatever. But I'm not really married to that so much where it bothers me if somebody believes in it or not. I mean, Mark Sargent believes they're real, and it doesn't faze me that he thinks that. I just disagree, and I'm perfectly content to do that. Digum Smack. Oh, Digum Smack. Okay. Thank you so much for the tip. Jeff Russ says, looking forward to the dialogue with Ken Wheeler. So are we. Laco Mambos, thank you so much for the tip. Bar says, thank you, Globebusters. Tom Nixon, and that's it on the super chats or the chats on Rockfin. Much appreciated, guys. Okay, so let's swing around. Last but certainly not least is Jeran from Jeranism. What you got coming up, Jeran?
Same old thing. Got some stuff going on. Some prizes for my raffle that are being paid out. We're going to do dinner tonight, some stuff like that. So just busy with that. And then Thursday, Friday, regular shows as normal. So check it out.
Outstanding. Will do. All right. And yeah, I guess we'll be back here tomorrow, or at least recording tomorrow. So that'll be cool. And I'm going to work on my strategy about, what we need to ask him and how we're going to do that. That's what I'll be doing for the rest of this evening, for sure. And so cool. So, all right, everybody. Like I said, sorry. Well, I shouldn't apologize. You got an extra hour, right? That's 4 hour Globebusters. We haven't done that in a while. But I didn't mean to overshoot it like that. Pretty soon people are going to be accusing me of being around Jeran too much. But, and I started late too. Jesus, man. Unbelievable.
My show is always the clockwork.
I know. It's so funny. Anyway, so we will be putting that together. I'm guessing that we'll probably, if all goes well and we don't have to do any editing or minor editing, we'll probably turn it around and release that on Wednesday night. And I will release it publicly to everybody. I won't make it an exclusive or anything like that. But so look forward to that. I'm really excited about it, and I really want it to go well. So please send your good thoughts towards that, and let's make something happen here. So that's it for us, and we will be talking to you really soon. Until then, be good to each other. Don't lie to each other. Open your mind, because there's truth inside. Peace out, everybody.